get stuck up there.
in the center of events. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Goffstown Planning Board meeting of Thursday, August 12th, 2010. We're going to take care of a few brief business items at first. But what I would first like to, is there anybody here in reference the map 5 lot 61-1, which is a site plan and conditional use permit for a proposed excavation project? That's over behind the villa. Brian, I'm going to reorder things, and can we take that, since that is a notice public hearing? Do we need to open it, and then we need a motion to continue? Because this is already a continued public meeting this evening.
Mr. Chair, I would recommend to actually not open the public hearing and just to continue it. Does that work that way?
Can't do it.
Yeah.
I think we have to open it
And then continue it?
and then continue. I need a, and then it was a notice public hearing.
I think you do have to do
Okay.
So, I'll open the public hearing. You have the floor, Brian.
Okay. Mr. Chair, the reason for the request to continue is due to the ZBA actually continuing the project at their meeting this past, a few weeks ago. They had discussed the project and requested additional information from the applicant and continued it to the September 7th meeting of the ZBA. And so hence the planning board really shouldn't take any action or have any discussion on this project, I think, until there is a decision from the ZBA as to whether or not a variance and a special exception would be allowed for that use on that property. And so the recommendation would be to continue it, and I don't remember the date that I had put on there. I think it was for 2 months from now.
October 14th. Yeah. That's what it says on here.
Okay. October 14th. So staff recommends that the board continue it to the October 14th meeting to allow for enough time for the ZBA to make a decision on their items.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to continue to October 14th.
Motion by Carla, seconded by Phil. To continue to October 14th, 2010. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I'd like to have some action on the minutes of July 22nd, 2010.
Motion to approve. Second. One correction. Mr. Chair.
So we had a motion and a second.
Yeah, and this,
Phil,
Second.
seconded by Carlos. Tim?
Page 12. 4 lines from the bottom. They claim they don't have 1,000, it should be 100,000 square feet.
Okay. Noted. Anything else? Other members of the board? Seeing none, accept a motion for approval of the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. One abstention. Excuse me. I was getting ahead of myself. Any correspondence or any other letter items that you want to bring to our attention, Brian? Other than those duly noted on the correspondence and FYIs?
Yeah, no, nothing additional. We did hand out a report from Tim Redmond regarding the CIP that's new, but Tim's going to go over that, so I'll let you...
I have a comment on one of the letters, Mr. Chair.
Certainly.
We get the administrative decisions pretty routinely. I know there's a couple copies of correspondence from to, there's also on our correspondence and FYI summary, a letter D. And I mean, I have to say that I think the conclusion of the code enforcement officer is a stretch. And it was very unclear to me that the pictures
Yeah, I don't want them to-
related in any way to what was being proposed. And quite honestly, it was unclear to me what the proposed location of this operation was also.
Well, hopefully it won't be as big as those pictures.
Well, I mean, you know, and I guess I have a question for the chair and the board. What's the process for this? Because if I was in a butter and this was coming in, and there's just been an administrative ruling that this can occur, I mean, I think there's an issue.
Okay.
I think so, too.
Not having dealt with an item such as this in the past,
Right, I mean, he was required to go through an analysis and to make a determination, but, you know, he's equating this use to a wholesaler retailer who's selling operating vehicles, and there's absolutely no indication that any vehicle on this site is proposed to be registered or even operable. And the distinction appears to be that there's a representation being made that parts are not going to be sold. And so, based on the fact that you're selling the entire vehicle as versus the parts, it would, and there's no representation that anything is being registered or operated, it seems to me that it's much closer to a salvage junkyard than it is a wholesaler retailer that has operators coming in to purchase running vehicles. And I would think it would impact on the type of traffic that the site sees, both for delivery and pickup, and it was very unclear to me what the proposal was as to that issue. You know, vehicles are delivered by truck in small groups to the client's site. It was very unclear. It doesn't say by a car carrier. So I couldn't determine whether or not that was like a wholesaler or retailer that gets operating vehicles that are put on and off a car carrier, or whether this is something else altogether. And it's clearly intended that a destination is certainly disassembly at junkyards. And it claims that the vehicles will not be disassembled or repaired on site, and it's an interim storage facility. So storage indicates to me, you know, that things are being stored there. That's more like a junkyard than it is a wholesaler or retailer that has vehicles moving on and off. And I'm not aware of any site in Goffstown that's even close to the size of the ones on these. And if you note, all of these sites appear to be by ports or airports, because a lot of that type of activity is dispersing vehicles overseas, which I just happen to know for some travel, and some people are in the business, which is why you see those type of huge operation by ports or airports. So I had a real question as to how this determination was made, and I guess my question is, it's presented to us for information purposes only, and I know the Board of Selectmen has, I guess it's more, has gotten involved in ZBA things. I don't really know what the path is at this point, if I was to say or convince the majority of you that there might be an issue with this determination. Because frankly, an abutter has no idea this determination has been made.
members of the board? I agree with Barbara as the chair, as a member of the board. Tim?
Well, maybe we could forward our comments through Brian to the zoning enforcement officer and have him take a second look at it based on the comments that have been brought forward at this meeting tonight.
Well, I mean, but then my issue goes to the interests of the applicant, who's now been advised of a decision, and I'm sure that there's a certain time period for which, if it's going to be reconsidered, has to be complied with.
There's a 30-day appeal period.
So is the planning board a proper board to make a motion to appeal the administrative decision made by the zoning board officer? Or is the zoning board of adjustment the proper authority?
I believe the planning board,
Okay.
planning board has a right to make a motion.
I think they have the right to make an appeal motion.
Any other members of the board have some concerns or considerations of this little fishing expedition?
Brian, where is this location? Do you know?
No, I don't.
Has everybody had an opportunity to read this? Because based upon the dates of the letter, we need to act
Act tonight.
accordingly this evening.
I haven't read the whole thing because I've been away.
That's okay, you can abstain.
Environmental
If
issues,
you
if
like.
you're gonna have vehicles that are not.
Or would you like
Well,
time?
I'm just looking at, I think, number 5 on page 3 is something that I was looking for in here as Barbara was bringing it up, because when you talk about the definition of, you talk about salvage or a junkyard. Junkyard has a definite definition of what a junkyard is, and it's very possible that this doesn't come under a junkyard because they're whole vehicles. They're not disassembled, sold, they're sold as is. So that might be part, and I think maybe number 5 on page 3 addresses that.
I understand that, but you can't have more than 2 unregistered vehicles in your yard, never mind an operation where none of the vehicles are registered, unless you're a wholesaler, reseller, or junkyard.
Tim?
On the very first page, the second bullet in the reply says that the vehicles are delivered by truck. Vehicles are intact but mostly often not roadworthy. That implies to me that there could be a lot of environmental concerns with these vehicles being stored on property in the town of Goffstown. If they're considered not roadworthy, I'm sure there's issues with fluids and such. So environmental concerns have to be addressed.
Hollis, you got anything?
Well, I would agree with what I've heard. I mean, I don't get a really good feel for what this is, where it is, and exactly how this business is gonna function.
Can anybody find anywhere on this where a
No,
reference to
I
the
read it.
map and lot where
No,
this
there is
is?
No?
Can't,
There is none.
I mean,
I read it.
yeah, there is no reference.
yeah, I sort of thought so.
This is more of a zoning interpretation than,
Right, which
No.
you come in and you have
Specific
broad
approval for a
statements
project.
and,
Lowell?
I agree in general with the discussion. I thought I had seen some mention in here, like addressing a possible fluid leak issue, but I can't find it now.
Well, that could be in the,
but if you have a wholesaler or retailer of automobiles, one of the considerations in the lot layout is exactly what's gonna happen with that type of material.
Isn't that part of the site plan, though, when
Yeah.
they come here?
Exactly.
That's got nothing to do with his determination.
Well, but except he's saying that's what it is. That's what it's familiar.
Well, I mean, when I read number 6 further on, after number 5, which goes on to page 4, and then number 6, it's specific in the case where an individual believes the proposed use is similar to the definition of motor vehicle junkyard provided in the zoning ordinance. The table of principal uses does not include motor vehicle junkyards and does not define which districts it is permitted or not permitted. So, I mean, he does go through a methodology of how he arrived at it.
I'm not denying that he went through a methodology of how he arrived at it. I disagree with the methodology based on what the applicant's representation of what the use is. I think it's very difficult to make a determination of the use while, this is a theoretical analysis without knowing the lot, and admittedly, that's a site plan issue. I don't know how you can do that.
Well, can I just ask something which might be a suggestion?
Right.
It's a question. I mean, you brought up a point. You're not allowed to have more than two or more unregistered motor vehicles on a parcel. And if that's the case, if these are considered motor vehicles, then they would come underneath that, and has he included that in his methodology or in his decision process?
Carlos?
Yeah, I'm really concerned about the environmental issues. The first bullet in the second paragraph on the first page says, "The company purchases vehicles from automobile insurance companies which have been damaged or considered a total loss by an insurance carrier." They've been in accidents.
Yeah, they're wrinkled.
They're damaged. So without knowing where this is going to be or any of the other things, I don't know how to classify this thing.
You look very studious over there, Jim. Yes.
That's a facade. Well, part of it, the issue is, what is the role of a code enforcement officer given a use that doesn't fall squarely into the ordinance? Now, you can struggle to find that it fits into something, or you can simply say that is not a permitted use. And I'm bothered if there's a sort of presumption that we've got to fit this into one of the uses that we've prescribed. And the reason you draft an ordinance with specific uses can be, one, you weren't smart enough to think of other uses, or two, the ordinance hasn't evolved to keep up with uses, or three, you didn't want that use in town. And we have the right to say there are certain uses we're not going to permit. And I would submit that this use, if you asked us when we were adopting our ordinance, would we want it, we'd say no, for all the reasons you said. It's not a junkyard, so it's not under junkyard controls. It's clearly not a new used car lot that has a certain social function and we have certain controls over. This is a bulk storage of damaged vehicles for resale and then disassembly. And I would say that was not a use that we would have allowed in our ordinance if we were thinking about it. Now, I can understand he's got to make a choice. I think it was the wrong choice because he didn't choose the choice of not permitted. And second is all he made was a zoning determination, not a site plan determination. So it still should come before us. So this isn't our last time we would see this. But I think as a matter of zoning, reasonable people can differ maybe, but I disagree with his conclusion.
Yes, Barbara?
I appreciate Jim's analysis, and I understand that it's an interpretation of zoning, and that's what the zoning code enforcement officer is supposed to do. But there's an appeal process, and it's not fair to applicants to let them wind down the road to get in front of us if we're going to say, and I don't think at that point we'd have I don't know what ability would.
No, I think that's correct.
We'd be hard pressed to be.
Once I think once he's made the determination, we've had notice of it. We have to assert the appeal right, because otherwise, just like when ZBA grants a variance, we have to consider it as permitted by variance. I don't think we can go back and make a zoning decision.
Okay. Given that understanding, I think might be befitting that we get some further adjudication on this matter. So I would accept a motion from the floor if there's one coming forth. A second for discussion.
Wasn't the decision before us whether to appeal this or not appeal it?
A
'Cause the clock's running.
motion to appeal.
So moved.
And I'll second that for discussion.
A motion by Tim, seconded by Collis. The motion is open for discussion. Bill?
I guess I have two questions. One, what are the grounds for appealing, and who's going to prepare the appeal?
I guess that'd be something that Brian and I'll have to work out the details after the matter is settled here.
Because I have to say one thing, we have a town attorney who cannot represent both boards. So there would have to be another attorney. So is the planning board considering hiring a second attorney?
I hate to say this publicly, but you don't need attorneys for all things.
I was going to say that myself.
I don't want that to go beyond this room, but
Agreed.
Yes, you do. I take that back. But in this case, we'll make an exception.
All right.
I mean, I think that if, you know, the appeal is sent out, if more information is submitted, it may be a proper determination, but I think based on the information in front of us, including what all the members of the board have pointed out as to what's, you know, I think it was the wrong
But
conclusion.
as a follow-up, I guess my concern is, the code enforcement officer is the person whose job description is to put the information together to give to the town attorney for appeals.
Well,
So
you know,
we're gonna-
Phil, I could ask what the Board of Selectmen is doing appealing ZBA decisions for the same
We,
reasons, so.
because there was new information that came to
Ladies
the
and
board.
gentlemen, please.
Completely different animal.
You still gonna give me a ride home tonight?
Absolutely.
On the-
I don't know where I'm gonna drop you off, though.
All right, Tim.
Well, based on Jim's how he surmised the whole thing, apparently this may not even fit into our zoning regulations, so that's the basis of our appeal. We don't think it fits into our zoning regulations.
Well, I think you could say either one, that it's not a permitted use and should not have been allowed as a, whatever the category, new and used cars sales. Or second, to the extent it is a permitted use, it would be permitted as a junk motor vehicle dealer because of the use that's being made of the vehicles.
But then he would have to subscribe to all the rules of a junk motor vehicle dealer and apply for,
Yeah, so
go through the process.
either one gets us to a better result. And
I don't have a problem with that.
And frankly, I mean, speaking for myself, if ZBA says, planning board, you're wrong, I can live with that. I won't be happy, but I'd at least like some other information to be put before the decider. George Bush used that one. And let them decide it, because then that gives us some guidance on site plan issues and all the things that will come back to us. But right now, we don't have that.
Is it, can we add some particulars, reference that it's not inconsistency with our master plan? Or our development regulations?
I think so.
All of the above. Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion?
Well,
Yes?
I think you need to amend it to give some specifics as to the reasons as part of the motion. So
Do we have to
you
do that?
I think you do, because we need to give you some direction of what to say in the appeal.
Question.
Yes, sir.
I just heard him say, what for you to say in the appeal. Does that
Well,
mean?
whoever is filed, if we're filing as a board,
Filing
you have
is
to
the
state
board.
Paperwork.
You have to state the
But
reasons.
who's gonna be, what staff, who is gonna be doing this?
Alan already said he and Brian are gonna work on it.
Okay.
And we'll amend the motion to direct the chair and the planning coordinator file it.
So I'll amend my motion to direct that the planning board chairman and the planning coordinator, Brian Rose, be the ones who will handle this appeal.
And I think you should amend it to state the reasons that we're appealing. Other than it's wrong, to state why we think it's wrong.
Well, the reasons have been outlined, and Gail has them all written down already. Do I have to repeat them all?
Inconsistency with the master plan,
It's
inconsistency with our development regulations,
not a specifically permitted use.
not a specifically permitted use.
And to the extent it is, it's more closely like ECHO.
Like a junkyard or a salvage yard.
So moved.
I'll amend my second as well.
Somewhere
Okay.
industrial.
We have several amendments that have been added and seconded. Any further discussion? In moving the motion, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed?
Abstain. Because this is gonna come before another board for the financial implication that I'll have to make a decision on.
Financial implication?
Financial
Oh.
implications it's
Motion.
gonna have on the.
Motion carries. One abstention. Moving on. First item on this evening's agenda, Ryan, is map 34, lot 29.
No. First amendment.
CIP?
Oh, excuse me, Tim. I didn't want to hear it because I didn't want to spend any money.
It's all right.
Go ahead, Tim.
We
You
just
have the
spent it
floor.
all.
Yeah, attorneys.
I'm the tight one. You have the floor, Timothy.
Thank you. This is my presentation of the 2011 to 2016 CIP matrix for the planning board. I don't think there are copies.
Yeah, they're right there.
I think those are agenda copies.
No, they're CIP copies right
Okay, so if anybody wanted a copy of the CIP report, there are copies available up front. Report is prepared for August 12, 2010. Introduction. In accordance with the State of New Hampshire RSA Section 674:5, the CIP Committee is authorized to prepare and amend a recommended program of municipal capital improvement projects projected over a period of at least 6 years. Section 674:6 pertains to the purpose and description of the capital improvement program. Projects are classified according to urgency and need for realization. Costs and sources of income are detailed in order to create the matrix. The program is based on information submitted by departments and agencies of the municipality, taking into account public needs indicated by the prospective development shown in the master plan or as permitted by other municipal land use controls. Section 674:7 outlines procedures and requirements pertaining to the actual preparation of the CIP program. And finally, 674:8 states that whenever a CIP committee prepares a capital improvement program under RSA 674:7, it shall submit its recommendations for the current year to the Selectmen and the Budget Committee for consideration as part of the annual budget. At this time, I would like to thank the members of the committee for their time and devotion to the process. Members Earl Carroll, Vice Chairman, Nick Campusano, Selectmen's Representative, Sue Tremblay, School Board Representative, Hank Boyle, and Bill Gordon, Community at-Large Representatives. There was no Budget Committee member present at this year's meetings. Also thanks to Brian Rose, Planning Department Coordinator, and Janice O'Connell, Town Finance Director. I would also like to thank all department heads and others who appeared at the meetings to give their presentations. Last year, the committee recommended a planning board, and the planning board approved a CIP recommended amount of $7,625,657. The voters approved $3,892,430. The approved amount had nearly $1 million worth of vehicles removed from the CIP program and placed onto a warrant article. The article failed, and those vehicles returned to this year's matrix. This year, the committee gave extra attention to the priorities assigned to the submitted requests. All attempts were made to move items out into the matrix based on priorities. Items left in this year's matrix were prioritized urgent or necessary. Presentation of the matrix. The police department. The police department requested the usual 3 replacement patrol cars, as well as phase 2 of the communication upgrade to eliminate dead spots around town in certain locations. A 50% grant is being sought to assist with the payment of the communication upgrade project. Fire department. The fire chief has requested a new tanker pumper to replace 2 trucks. One of the trucks needing replacement is often out of service due to ongoing problems. A new ambulance is requested and will be paid for with the Ambulance Reserve Fund. The fund is maintained through user fees. The ambulance purchase will have no tax impact. There is still approximately $142,000 in the Fire Capital Reserve Fund to offset a tanker pumper purchase. Public Works. Public Works Director asked for several vehicles and machines this year. Ultimately, 2 trucks were recommended by the committee. 1 new 10-wheel dump truck with plowing equipment, and 1 new trash truck for recycling or recycling for roadside pickup. The other 3 requests were moved out into the matrix. Parks and Rec. The Parks and Rec Director asked for a new truck anticipating increased workload when his department takes over maintenance of the rail trail. As the completion is still several years away, the committee moved his request 2 years out into the matrix. Administration. A large request for new financial software was made. After the Finance Director's presentation, the committee decided to leave it in this year's matrix. Based upon the Finance Director's information, there is a real concern that the current software is outdated and the customer support availability is down to 2 days a week. The town has outgrown the mom-and-pop vendor as they cannot provide adequate support for the town. There is a request for HVAC equipment upgrades for the town hall. This will be paid for through the Molly Stark Fund, provided there are still funds available after the repairs are made to the town hall roof and clock tower. Again, no taxpayer impact. A GIS flyover was pushed out again this year as it was last year. Parks Department capital projects. The Parks has requested 3 projects. 2 were deemed urgent and left in this year's matrix. Both were resurfacing projects for the town pools, specifically the pool bottom in and around the main drain area. A football field improvement project was moved out 2 years in the matrix. Public Works capital projects. Other than the road plan, Public Works requested funding for 2 projects. Worthley Hill Road drainage, and Phase 1 for the West Lawn Cemetery expansion. Both projects were left in the matrix. The committee voted to eliminate 2 lines of the proposed matrix, ongoing sidewalk repairs and ongoing drainage upgrades. The committee voted to eliminate these lines as they were not specific projects and should be part of the department's maintenance budget, not in CIP. The library capital project. The library has asked 2 projects that were brought forward. The first is an expansion of the parking lot, and the second is an expansion of the library itself. The library trustees recently purchased part of the adjoining property with trust funds to accommodate these expansions. The parking lot expansion was pushed out to 2012. The library expansion was placed in 2015. Solid waste, once again, beginning a barrel replacement program seemed unwise at this time. Historic District Commission, Conservation Commission, and Planning and Economic Development Commissions made no requests for 2010. Offsetting revenues are listed in the matrix. Sewer Commission, Village Water Precinct, and Grassmere Precinct. All of the above departments are user-funded, and they may obtain federal or state grants for projects. Their reports are in the matrix. And last, the School Department. The School Department made no new requests. The matrix shows bond payments and ongoing building performance upgrades at the Maple Avenue School and Bartlett School. The upgrades are providing cost savings to the district in the area of energy and energy conservation. In conclusion, the CIP committee began with requests totaling $7,055,407 and ended up with requests totaling $5,998,407. The recommended amount is $1,627,250 less than last year's amount, with nearly $1 million worth of vehicles that were added back into this year's requests. Respectfully submitted, Tim Redmond, CIP Chairman, 2010. If anybody has any questions, I would do my best to answer them.
Question? Jim? Question?
I'm just trying to think about all these things.
Question?
Just one question. Is this a public hearing
Yes.
for the CIP?
Yes, it is.
And is listed and noticed as such in the newspapers? Okay. So we probably have people in the audience who wish to speak, and we'll recognize those after members of the board get a chance to ask some basic questions at the start. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Tim, you mentioned in the beginning of your report that this year there was no budget committee member.
There was no budget committee
Was
member.
that something that the planning board or your CIP committee decided not to have the budget committee?
We were waiting for the budget committee to assign a member. They did not assign one. And I think I may have asked Brian to check into it, and I believe he did, and they said they had no one available to. I may misquote. What did they say, Brian?
We asked a couple of times and just got no response really from them on sending someone to us.
Okay, thank you. And just for the record, for the minutes be correct, it's Mildred Stark, not
What did
Molly.
I say?
Molly.
Oh, my mistake.
I
Molly.
know, because this room is named after her.
I was thinking about this one. Mildred Stark Fund, thank you.
Jim, any comments, observations? Lowell?
Well, no,
No, go ahead.
well, I was happy to see one of the members be quoted in the paper. It happened to be Earl Carroll, was a favorite member of mine. Point out, this is not a budget committee, it's a planning committee, and we have to remind ourselves of the public that we're identifying capital needs and creating a schedule by which we think they can be brought in. It's up to the budget committee, or the selectmen, or the voters to determine if in fact they want to do that. And that's not our role. I think this committee has done a very good job recognizing that role, and I commend you, because
You actually read that twice, because I said it at the all-boards
You
meeting,
did?
and our
Oh, okay.
esteemed reporter reported it.
oh, okay, I'm sorry if
So
I
it was
didn't give you
reported
full
twice.
credit, but that's a pleasant change from some CIP committees in the distant past, which didn't recognize the division of responsibilities. So I thought
Well,
Tim's done a good job instructing his crew.
That's why I kind of quoted the RSAs in my introduction, because I wanted to have more a feel of it for what our goal is, as opposed to what we're perceived to be.
Lowell?
I didn't have any other
Nothing,
comments.
okay. Barbara?
Just a question, and I think this is more directed at Brian. Tim, thank you very much for the work and the presentation. You said you made a change from what was mailed to what we have in front of us as board members
Yes.
tonight. What was the change, Brian?
Line 167. It was brought up to me that it's a bond payment for landfill closure, and basically, line 167 had the numbers in the wrong year, so they
So
were
it was
in, they were in,
199 and now it's 206?
actually, there was nothing for that in 2011. It was in the 2000 numbers you see here were in the 2012, and there was nothing, so they were all shifted to the right 1 year
All right, I just want,
incorrectly.
all right, thank you, because I just noticed that Tim said the total was 5,999 and the total on this spreadsheet is 6,200.
And that happened in between my report and the time I got the final.
Oh, all right, I
So
thought it might
that's,
have
because here's the report,
been. Okay,
this
that's
was
all
my
right, I just
spreadsheet I
wanted
was
to make
working off
sure.
of right here,
Yeah,
from August 12th.
right, that's the one we had.
It was a cell in the Excel spreadsheet that didn't have the formula in
No,
it.
it wasn't, it was this one here, I just got that one. All right, I did notice there was a difference, I think I had it circled on mine.
Is that why Town Hall wants new software?
No, I got nothing to do with that. I can do my own math,
Okay, thank you.
usually.
Carlos, do you have any observations or
No, I'm all
comments?
set, thank you.
Board members haven't had an opportunity to just ask a few questions. I would elicit any comment from the general public in the audience in reference to the CIP as it pertains to projects or otherwise, but not in how it's scheduled, not about the necessity or other things. That's not what we're here for. So, who would like to speak first? Kathy?
Hi, my name is Kathy Gooten. I'm questioning two lines. I'm questioning line 48. No, excuse me, it's 49. Sterling back on truck. And on that it says 25% funding from the sewer commission. And then you go down to line 72, which says that it's for a Ford F-350 with a plow, 50% funding from the sewer commission. I then go over to the sewer commission on page 6, and there's a line 214, which states that in 2012, there's $53,000 on that line. Are you saying that this truck is going to cost $103,000 if that's the way it's reported? And that's for the 3112, the F-350 with the plow. And when we go to the vac-on truck, is that $392,000 as reported on line 49 the full amount? And if it is, then I don't see the other 25% on the sewer side. I don't see follow-through here, and I don't understand what it's saying to me as a sewer commissioner. Is this $392,000 the full amount?
Yes.
Yes, it is, this is what,
And 25% of that is $95,000.
Okay, so would it not be more appropriate to put 75% in the DPW line and the other 25% on a sewer line?
Well, you'd have to have another vehicle line for you then, for the, you'd have to duplicate that truck and show split ownership of it.
Correct. But isn't that what they're doing on line 72 with the Ford F-350 and showing it as $48,000 under DPW and then showing it as $53,000 on the sewer line?
It's obviously a typographical error
Okay,
based on
that's
submissions to the planning department. We don't have anything to do with these numbers, they're handed to us, and then Brian plugs them in. So maybe someone copied a number wrong and turned it into Brian. We can correct those items for next year's matrix.
Yes, I just wanted to know how you were planning it.
I'll actually speak with the Public Works Director and find out how he has put these numbers in, and if the 25% funding needs to be shown somewhere else.
It's shown under revenues.
It's shown in the offsetting revenues?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
187 and 188 have the offsetting
I would
revenues.
assume that it would have been offsetting revenue. Did you find that, Catherine?
I'm looking now, 187.
Yeah, share of
Sewer
truck
commission,
299.
$299.
We'll just make sure that in 2012, we,
Well, I don't know how much it could be much more clear, because the truck costs $392,000, of which an offsetting revenue will be $95,000 from the sewer commissioners.
yes, and I
that's-
question, I'm not gonna get into that right now, but, I don't know when the sewer commission has had that discussion.
Well, then you better go talk to the Public Works Director.
I think that's a good point.
Thank you.
Any other individual wishing to speak reference the CIP improvement, capital improvement program?
It would just,
Your name, please, for the
my
record.
name is Catherine Kraza. I have a question about line 156. It's the Pleasant Street Mass Road improvements, Elm Street, Main Street, High Street intersection.
We talked about that too. Catherine?
Can you elaborate on why that number is different than previous CIP numbers, and why it's broken up into a 2011 proposed CIP and what the 2011 approved by CIP?
The 2011 number is the Public Works Director's estimation for the engineering for the whole package to get it designed. That's an engineer,
50,000.
that's the engineering costs.
Yep.
Then the other money, the $751,000 in 2012, is the cost to facilitate those improvements. Now, we have, we also have offset, the Bog Road project offsite. We don't have that money, I don't know if that money appears in the offsetting revenues, Catherine. I know there was money set aside. Well, it doesn't say what the exact amount is by the Bog Road project. And a lot of this stuff, Catherine, when Public Works Director brings these forward, you notice the word anticipates a $446,270 grant.
Right. I
He
see
still
that.
runs them through the program in the hopes that the grant will come through. A lot of this stuff doesn't happen because the grants don't come through. And I'd also like to defer to Earl Carroll in case Earl would like to chime in on this, because he is co-chair of the committee, and he might have another bit of information that I'm not relating.
Thanks, Tim. One of the biggest problems we face on this is determining what types of offsetting revenue there's going to be, and are these offsetting revenues going to happen? Sometimes the internal stuff is a lot easier to predict than grant money. So we take the numbers given to us by the Public Works Director. We make a determination, not whether the numbers are real or not, unless they're totally absurd. And then we plug them into the matrix in the hopes that everything is going to play itself out. One of the problems that is going to be addressed as this moves through the process, the planning board process, the budget committee process, the selection process, they're going to be able to fine-tune a lot of those numbers, because they're going to be able to determine, are these grants actually going to happen, or what the likelihood is of the grant happening. The other thing I want to point out, just as a general comment, is that the number that Tim gave us in his report, right around $6 million, does not take into consideration all of the offsetting revenues. When we plugged all those offsetting revenues in, with the hope that they're going to happen, we actually got that number down to a little bit under $5 million. Which, when looking back at least the last 2 years, the number we've got this year is roughly $5 million. Last year was $7.5 million. The year before that was just a shade under $7 million. So the committee and the department heads have really worked to get these projects into what is more likely reality than what is just a dream.
For instance, would be that the firehouse, $7 million request for a new fire station, it was in next year's spot in the matrix. We moved it out 2 years because we don't see any likelihood that it's going to really come to fruition in the next year.
Right,
So
and that's kind of what my question was about, because this number for this Pleasant Street is 751, and I don't have last year's copy, but from memory, I think it was about 350.
Well,
So this is about double for this line item, and then the firehouse was 200 and something, so it went from 7 to 200. Is that just engineering that's in 2012 on the fire?
I think it was, I don't remember if it was the architectural design. You may remember, Catherine, that the Pleasant Street was lumped in with the Wallace Road intersection for years.
Yes.
And then it got, when the Wallace Road intersection became a reality, Pleasant Street got grouped with Elm Street and High Street and that failed intersection. So we've kind of been moving up into the village a little at a time with this.
So this is a much bigger discussion, and when is the appropriate place or venue to have the discussion about what's in this number? And there was a village planning commission that prioritized the intersections based on accident data, and I know you have many things on the agenda tonight, so I don't wanna...
We wouldn't even dissect this ever as a committee. We do what we said. We take these numbers, we plug them in. If you need to get breakdown information, you'd either need to speak with the Public Works Department or a Budget Committee meeting and have them dissect it, or have the Board of Selectmen dissect it. But it's not a planning board function.
Okay, and can you tell me what the timeline of that is? Do they meet over the summer and then they vote in March? And
I don't know. You'll have to go to those. We do our presentation to the planning board so that it can be adopted and passed on. So it's, in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be passed on to the next appropriate committees.
which is the budget committee?
Selectmen, I believe, get it first. Is that correct, Phil? Yeah, the Board of Selectmen gets it first, then it goes to the budget committee.
Thank you very much.
Catherine, just for your information, the number on last year's matrix for Pleasant Street was $381,000.
Okay.
But lots of times, those numbers, when a project is in the out years, sometimes the numbers are carried forward from
Right.
year to year
Right.
without being adjusted either for inflation or
Scope.
for scope of the project or for more recent data.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak? Megan, you have your hand raised.
Well, I don't want to misstate something, but I just wanted to mention that on line 156, it talked about the Pleasant Street national improvements, but it also says and Elm
Right.
High and Main intersections. I believe the
That's what I
town went
said.
after a CMAQ grant for the combined two intersections, so that's probably another reason why that amount is worth.
Well, that's what I think I told her, that they had combined Wallace Road with Pleasant Street, got separated. Now Pleasant Street got combined with Elm High and Mass.
So it's a larger project than what you might have been
Different, yeah.
thinking.
Thank you.
Bill?
No, she just
Oh,
pointed out
Megan.
what I was gonna say.
I think there's a typo on line 187, just going back to the sewer commission truck. The truck number is 299, I think we're really talking about truck number 312. Just a little, because there is no 299.
I think Kathy's right on that one, it is truck 312,
No, it's the fixed asset number we're looking at. You gotta go to the fixed asset number. It's 299.
Oh, okay.
That's how, instead of trucks being numbered, the town has a fixed asset list through the finance
Okay.
department. So this past year, all vehicles and town, anything that could have a fixed asset number was assigned to it to try to make sure we followed up on vehicles, because some of these vehicles kinda got lost in the jumble.
Yeah.
Cars got mixed up and trucks got mixed up, so
Okay.
it was the finance director's determination to assign fixed asset numbers to all vehicles.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Bill, did you have another comment beyond that observation?
Thank you.
Coming back to the board, but not closing the public hearing, are any members of the board have any other additional information, comments, or thoughts? Then, this also requires a second public hearing,
No,
singular?
single public hearing. Adopt it tonight, or reject it,
Or defer.
or defer it. There's always three choices.
I don't know, from my point of view, having seen all this and the comments from the public and observations from the other board members, I really would like to think about it till our next meeting, but that's the
The
board's
problem with that
prerogative.
is it delays the process to the board, and it delays the process to the,
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
We got plenty of time. Yes, sir.
Board of Selectmen is anticipating it. For discussion, it's on the agenda for the next 2 weeks.
Public information, you can talk about it.
But until we're actually presented, it's accepted by the planning board and it's presented to the Board of Selectmen, we can't work on it.
Collins?
I haven't heard anything tonight that causes me any great concern, and I'm prepared to adopt it tonight.
I just would also like to put out the fact that the next planning board meeting is canceled, so we won't be meeting for a month.
It was never scheduled.
Agreed. I know that.
It wasn't canceled, it just never was.
Never existed, excuse me.
Now,
It hasn't for years.
Jim, you probably know more about these laws than I do, and you can help me with this, or Barbara
We
as
hope he
well.
does.
I think the planning board has the option to amend the matrix tonight at this meeting, is that correct? Okay. So are you considering making an amendment, Alan? Is that where we're going with this?
I was thinking about it.
Okay, I just want to make sure I get right to cut to the chase here.
I think it's our prerogative to take recognition of the fact of whether it is or it isn't. And generally, we just kind of vote yes. Well, maybe I should stand up and say, maybe this isn't, maybe we should be thinking of something else that's more important in terms of our master plan, and where we want to go with this town. I think we owe it to ourselves, and not just as board members, to think of it as a planning tool and not just a document for budget purposes. And getting it on one night and moving it on one night, I don't think is fair to giving it some adjudication in terms of whether it meets our master plan. I truly don't think it does.
How is that it doesn't meet it? If you don't mind me asking.
There's 300 line items here that I haven't had a chance to really look at. Particularly Public Works.
Well,
No?
unless there's some
I
suggestion.
have the floor.
Oh, sorry. I thought you had finished with
I'm
particularly
not quite
Public
finished.
Works.
I just think that it's all well and good to have all that, but if we have a road plan, I think it should encompass all the work done by the Public Works Department, not just road paving and crooked yellow lines on our roads. Yes, sir.
Well, if I could point out the fact that we eliminated 2 lines from the matrix this year that we considered not CIP items, they should be maintenance items for the department, and we eliminated 2 lines that are lines, what did I do with my matrix? I can tell you the 2 of them, Alan. We eliminated lines in the Public Works, page 4, page 5. Oh, they're gone. I can go to
It's
the
like
old.
a meeting that
Let me
never
go to the old
was.
matrix and tell you how much they were. Excuse me, Carlos. Yeah, we had a line that used to say sidewalk, and it was 71,000 this year, 75,000 next year, 79,000 a year after, 83, 87, 91. Ongoing annual upgrades. Then we had another one that says drainage projects, 44,000 this year. Next year, 150,000, 158 the year, 165, 170, 179 out in 2016. Ongoing annual upgrades. We voted as a committee that we thought that these did not meet the objectives of the CIP program as they were not specific projects. And as a committee, we voted to eliminate those lines. So that goes partially to what you're talking about, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Not far enough. Not far enough.
Well, maybe we could take this under advisement, and next year we could have more participation by other members of the board to come to our meetings and make these suggestions so that we could have these items prepared for the presentation rather than have to bog down the meeting and go over them tonight. And don't forget too, the road plan is routinely reduced by the budget and the selectmen. If it goes in at 2.5 million, it comes out at 1.5 or 1.6 for some number of different years, different amounts. But it does get changed.
So as a planning tool, why do we have to wait for the selectmen to make a decision?
We're not, the CIP is not a budget committee, don't forget.
We are,
Who's we?
because we vote on it.
No, we're not a budget committee, not
Oh,
the
no.
planning board.
No, we're the CIP committee, and we have a right to amend and vote on this.
We can't reduce the numbers in the matrix. We can move them out, but we can't change the numbers in the matrix. It's not our function.
Oh, I don't know about that. Go ahead, Phil.
I just have an observation. I mean, if there's a concern that the committee did not follow the goal of the master plan, or that the planning board should change something, I think it would be appropriate to give that direction to the committee before they meet, rather than after the committee has met all during the summer, while everybody else is on vacation, takes their families different places, and these members meet. And then they're gonna come back here, and then we're gonna make the change, because that message that we're sending the volunteers that we ask to serve on this committee every summer and do this, is you guys can do whatever you, do your thing, and when you come here, we're gonna change it to what we think is after you do your job, and I don't think that's the appropriate way to do it.
It's everybody's opinion. Yes, sir.
Well, I agree, Phil. I had the matrix in plenty of time before tonight's meeting to look through it. I didn't see anything in the matrix that concerned me. I didn't hear anything during the public hearing that concerned me. I think it's a matrix that was well prepared, and I'm prepared to make a motion to accept the CIP matrix as it's presented here tonight.
Are you making that motion?
Yes, I am.
There's a second to the motion,
I'll second it.
seconded by Jim. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, sir.
I view this as identifying items. The cost is useful, but our first goal is to identify the items to
Correct.
be done. And
Correct.
the numbers are there because they help us schedule it over time, but we're not fixated on those numbers. We're not recommending that, I don't think, that you do the recreational field development and we will spend $100,000, because that's, as you said, that's an estimate of what the cost is, but we're not saying it's gonna cost $100,000. Could be less, could be more, and that's the selectmen's process. So I'm not looking at the numbers, I'm looking at this column that lists what it is and when it's recommended to happen. I disregard the dollars, frankly, because they're useful and they're scheduling, but in the end, we're identifying what we need. And there's nothing that precludes us in the future years of bringing something forward that doesn't appear now, but we decide next year we need it. We're not trapped by this. This is a tool, and that's all it is. So I look at what's on this year and then have a clue of what may be coming up. But I don't, that's why it's a planning tool, that's all.
Jim?
The CIP committee could also take a totally different direction. Other towns, Bedford, for instance, has a CIP plan, but they do not do it the way we do it. They have savings plans for every one of those vehicles in capital reserve savings funds. So, for instance, when the 3 police cars are proposed for this year, they're not going to have to go out and appropriate that money by raising taxes to get that. They've already saved that money through a CIP savings plan, and that's how they operate their CIP program.
But there's one other thing, too. They have a different form of government.
That's
They
true.
have a council, and they don't, it's a different form of
Point
government.
taken. Thank you, Phil. But as opposed to an appropriations that's out there and, to be voted on or taxed, they have a different approach to funding those vehicles and different projects as they come up in their CIP matrix.
Barbara, you had your hand raised.
Just in regards to that point, CIP was partially adopted in this town to try and get away from minor bonding or multiple year capital reserve funds on the argument that you were asking people to save towards something that they might not ever see the benefit of. And that by spreading large projects out over a period of time, you were trying to balance the annual impact to the taxpayer of the community, be it by project selection, alternate funding sources, grants, or cost sharing of other matters. So I think Tim has a good point about how other communities do it differently, but I think that's how we've ended up here. As for the motion before the board, I did not hear any public comment in regards to a discrepancy from the master plan. I did not hear other volunteers from this committee to attend these meetings this past summer. And again, I want to thank Tim for doing it. And perhaps next year, as one of the organizational meetings for the committee, they can make a decision as to whether or not they want to present the matrix by department or by master plan chapter. I'm not trying to be silly about it, but if that's what your focus wants to be, and maybe within the committee itself, some consideration can be done to that. But I think that the presentation, as we've heard tonight from Tim, together with the public comments and some of the future year corrective notes that are being made, thanks to Kathy and the Sewer Commission, were all appropriate and beneficial.
Agreed. Okay, Tim?
One last thing, it is in 6747 in the preparation. The last line is, and shall review the recommendations of the master plan in relation to the proposed capital improvements program. It's right there in black and white, like you're saying, and I don't disagree with you.
I move the question.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes against. Motion carries. Thank you, Tim.
And the other members of the committee.
I think he needs that.
Moving along to our regular schedule of business events. Map
Maybe you could ask him if he wants to restate it.
Map 34, Lot 29, completeness review and site plan amendment hearing for a proposal to amend the 1999 site plan approval to allow for the hours of operation to be extended to close 1 hour later at 11 p.m. rather than close at 10 p.m. at Cumberland Farms, Inc., South Mass Street, Zone Commercial. Brian.
Mr. Chair, before we begin this, I just note that it's almost an hour after we began and a lot of people have come in the room. Could you announce what has been continued again in case anybody is here that came in afterwards? I don't know that anybody is, but there are a lot more people here than were here an hour ago.
Okay. The last item on our new business or old business was map 5, lot 61-1 and 95-1, which was a site plan for a proposed excavation project behind the villa. If you are not a butter or here to speak in reference that has been continued until October 14th, 2010.
Thank you.
Okay. Brian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you stated, this is the Cumberland Farms. It's on map 34, lot 29. It's right at the corner of Mast Road and Mountain Road. This is the zoning map of it. Project is currently right there on the southeast corner of Mountain Road and Mass Street, South Mass Street. The property is zoned commercial. However, it's surrounded by residential and office zoning, and the residential zoning is in the pink color, so it's all of this out here. The RSB01, or the residential office, is located here. There are a couple of pockets of commercial throughout that area. It is along a state highway, and so I think it's appropriately zoned commercial still. However, we're not talking about zoning, we're talking about the hours of operation. They were here before you a few months ago requesting to go to midnight for their hours of operation, and were denied that request. That had not been before you for any public hearing or anything like that, and at the time it had been determined that, you know, that because it was in a residential area, that should not go to midnight. Now, subsequently to that action, our zoning administrator, Derek Horn, found back in the file information that the hours of operation were technically only supposed to be 5 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock in the evening. And so he wrote a letter back to the applicant and stated that that was the time. And so therefore they've come back and wanted to at least get to the 11 o'clock time, which they thought they had all along, but apparently didn't. So basically, what staff is recommending is that the board reconsider that decision or review this proposal to go from 10 o'clock, from 5 o'clock till 11 o'clock for the operating hours. Now, staff has also proposed one condition on this project, and that is that no delivery, loading, unloading operations, trash pickup operations, or underground fuel tank refilling operations shall occur before 6 a.m. and after 8 p.m. That's in hopes to kind of keep down the noisy operations that might occur at a gas station, in order to help alleviate some of the problems that might occur with residences so close by. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Okay. Is there a representative of the applicant here wishing to present for the applicant? Please step up to be recognized, sir.
My name?
You come all the way up and sit right down here, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Bob Jenis. I'm a regional manager with Cumberland Farms. I've been with them 36 years. I'm in charge of 66 stores, that being New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And what we're looking to do is, recently we have taken over the Golf Express and made that a Cumberland Farms. We are looking to expand on that operation to make it a lot better. We've already cleaned it up, both outside, inside. We are looking to, in the future, to renovate that location within its existing plan and everything, and potentially, close the other site that we have, which at one time was 24 hours, and then, midnight. So the only thing we're really looking to do at this point is to extend the hour from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, which would allow us to have that extra hour to basically, compete along with the Irvings and the Shelves in Goffstown. And we respectively, look for that, approval. We look to be long-term, members of the community. We've been here for a long, long time. We expect to be here for a lot longer. We want a site that is going to be something that is very impressive for the town and something to be proud of. And we're looking to work, with our neighbors to try to help out. The time frames there is something that was discussed, and it could be even probably changed a little bit. Personally, 6 o'clock, maybe a little bit early from a standpoint of we're trying to get a delivery in. So I guess that is my request. I do represent Cumberland Farms officially, and open to any kind of questions.
Members of the board, does anybody have any questions of Mr. Jenis? Yes, Jim?
Well, just picking up on the last point, Mr. Janice, I agree with you that 6 a.m. is early for deliveries. What would be a more appropriate time?
I would say probably 8 o'clock. Most everyone is up at that point in time, going to work, if not maybe a little bit earlier. I think 8 o'clock. And, the 8 p.m. I think probably is sufficient. We don't generally have any kind of deliveries. The only time we'd have anything at that point in time, in some locations, could have been, maybe a gas delivery. But that's not, would not be an issue here. So I would say, 6 o'clock in the morning, 8 p.m. at night.
That's what we're recommending. Are you?
No, I'm saying 8 a.m.
Yeah,
in the morning
yeah.
to
8 p.m. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Phil?
Yeah, just a follow-up on that, though, the 8 a.m., have you, I'm sure you probably have, but I guess the only concern that I have is 8 o'clock in the morning, especially during school, when school's back in session, we have a lot of traffic. If you start having deliveries coming at that point in time, you have a conflict with other traffic that's coming through the village. And I don't know your business, okay? And if the deliveries were starting to come in at that point, 8:30, because there is a time period that the high volume of traffic is through the village. After that little window, there's not much traffic. So I don't know, I guess my question is, I probably have, I assume, have you taken into consideration that time? It might seem to me, not knowing your business, that 7 o'clock in the morning might be a time to have the deliveries, not have the deliveries from 8 to 9. I don't know, I'm just bringing that.
Realistically speaking, the 7 a.m. is more realistic for us because we can't control necessarily all of the vendors, and the ones that would come at that time would be probably, a hostess vendor or something of that nature. Your bread vendors would normally come because they get a pretty early start in the morning and they leave early for the afternoon. That would be it, trying to work, with everybody. That was just a suggestion on my part, but you are probably correct. 7 does make it more realistic. And that way they get in and get out. But normally those would be, smaller vehicles generally.
And just the only reason why I say that, because, again, I don't know your business, but it would appear to me that I would be able, if I were in charge, that I could control the deliveries and say no deliveries between, I would make that arrangement with my vendors. Try not to be here between this time, because then I got 3 of you trying to fight in here with all the traffic, so either you come before this time or you come after this time.
Right, that makes good sense. Right.
Carlos?
Alan, there's been enough traffic impact studies done in that area that we could look to that show the peak hours. And having been involved with enough of these, that peak hour time is usually a 6 to 8. It may slide one way or the other a little bit, but it's usually that 6 to 8 time slot where the peak traffic comes through. So by 8 o'clock, most of the traffic's gone through.
Correct. Okay. Jim?
We had an issue previously with, it wasn't somebody from Cumberland Farms, it was one of the major oil distributors who thought we had to do it their way, about sound. I assume this isn't squawking pumps and the like, because that wasn't in the original approval. I don't think it's ever been allowed to have.
What is the question?
There's sound systems at the.
We don't have that.
Okay, because that would be an irritant.
Yeah, we haven't had that probably a couple of years now.
They used to have one.
We did.
Yeah.
Well, they're not supposed to.
Originally, post-pay was the way to go, and then when the prices started going up as high, something that none of the chains or dealers could deal with. They just couldn't handle people who were driving up, getting the gas and heading out, and that was a way to try to control that. But we actually found that we like it better without it. Everything is prepay now, which either through a credit card or prepay, and no intercom system, and we do that everywhere. It just makes more sense for us. Yeah.
I have a question for
Yes,
Brian.
Barbara?
Brian, have we had any calls here that you're aware of the operation until 11 PM regarding?
Mr. Chair and Board Member Griffin, I believe that we did receive a call after the original decision was made to not allow it to go to midnight. The call, I think, came in from one of the abutters concerned that they had thought that it was 10:30, and that was kind of what spurred Derek to look into it and check. And so that was, I think, the only one call that we've had.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of the board? And I'll open the public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to speak? Tim?
I just wanted to know if we have any information on other stations in the village area. Is there time limitations on the mobile station at the north end of town and such? Do we know? Try to keep everything on an even playing field here.
I did not look into that as far as other stations were concerned.
I'm pretty sure they're all closed by 8. Downtown, as the direct gas and mobile. The Shell station is open until 24 hours, and the Irving station is open till 11.
So we have an answer. Yes, Jim?
This is a material change in a site plan. It's an application to make a change to a previously approved site plan. Is that where we are procedurally?
Well, we don't physically have a site plan. We have a prior approval at limited times. But I'm assuming it would be technically an amendment to a site plan.
I move that we find that the application for the amendment is complete and we hear it.
Oh, I didn't see that up in my notes here. I'm sorry.
I'll second that.
I'm reading my notes, I'm sorry. We have a motion on the floor to accept as the application as being complete and does not have a regional impact?
Correct.
And seconded by Lowell. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I move that we allow Gail to put that first in the sequence of events.
I'm sure she will, to make us look better. Okay. Going back to the public, is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak in reference to this application for a time change? Yes, ma'am. Oh, no, there are two blondes in the way here. Way in the back.
Hi, I'm Judy LeClaire, and my husband Dick. We live directly across the street from the Cumberland Farms. I do have, actually, the neighborhood does have concerns. Brian, I was the one that called about the hours. The trucks going in are there early morning, 4:30 some mornings. It's too early. At night, if they want to stay open until 11 o'clock, for most of us, our bedrooms are in the front of our houses. The lights from the overhang and the parking lot lights illuminate the bedrooms. We're not the only ones that have that problem. They're open 17 hours now. The traffic there, we all know, is horrendous. Myself, we opened a small antique shop in May of last year. I had to come in front of the ZBA for approval for my sign and for a light that I had over my sign. And they were very adamant at that point to make sure that my light did not interfere with my neighbor next door and his family. So I had to shut off my light at 9 o'clock. So I'm hoping that even though I'm a small little business, we're still in the same neighborhood. The rules, I would think, have to be the same for everybody. It's just not right for us. He's comparing the Irving station and the Shell station down the road in that commercial area to this, and it's really not the same thing. You've got houses. They're little stations clustered in the middle of the houses. So we're really in objection to having this happen till 11 o'clock at night. Their trucks, again, they do come early. Having them come at 6 a.m. in the morning would be a godsend. I understand Phil's point about having them come at 8 o'clock because the buses go through there. It would be too much. And as they do now, these trucks, these 18-wheelers come in and back in to the lot, stopping traffic. in the middle of the street. It happened yesterday, I was home yesterday, and I was like, what happened? And they're all, they're trying to back into a very precarious area, because going down Mountain Road and coming back up again is horrendous. So we're against it.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am, way in the back.
Hi, my name is Linda Luby, and I live on the corner of Harcourt and Martin
Why don't you
Road.
come right up here so that we can hear it on your microphone, please?
I've lived there for 16 years, and the Tatros were there first. They did a great job of listening to the neighborhood, doing things that we wanted done. Since the Gulf took over, things started to go down, and it has continued with the Cumberlands. The trucks are there at 4:30 in the morning. They're beeping. The gas is coming early. I have to listen to like a cha-ching and that. A Mountain Road and the whole center of town there is a mess. And then we have now, since they've taken over, it's become a hangout for kids. We've got the mud trucks going in and out. I've gone down to the police station to put complaints about there anonymously, because you have a number of teenagers hanging out there. The trucks are peeling in and out constantly. They're up and down Mountain Road. And I don't see what this is going to do for us as a community to have the hour extended.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for the applicant.
Yes.
You're not gonna have another one of those tigers ever on the roof, because I just heard from people who have lived here long enough to
Oh, yeah,
remember the tiger on the top? Yeah, no?
Right, no.
Okay.
I think if I could,
I just want to see if there's any other, we'll get a chance to speak at the end, okay, Mr. Jennings? Is there anybody else in the audience wishing to speak? Kathy?
I live on Mountain Road, and I certainly go by this at least once a day. But I think the town has a noise ordinance that goes from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. And I think that might play into the picture here, because it is one of the ordinances of the town. Other than that, that's the only thing that I just wanted to mention, is that I think the noise ordinance can play a part in the decision-making process here.
Thank you. Is there anybody else out there in the, way in the back? Please step forward so we can be recognized.
I'm Teresa Golding, and I live directly beside the Gulf Station, and I just wanted to mention that there's a lot of noise and activity constantly, even after 10 o'clock. But I really count on it closing at 10 because I get a few hours of sleep, but the activity starts well before 5 o'clock every day, because they're getting ready to open at 5. The deliveries go late at night. Some of those trucks come at 2 or 3 in the morning. So I really do count on having that 10 o'clock deadline. So I hope that you will not change that for my family and myself.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
How you doing? Chris Wendland, live directly across the street. I'm in agreement with all the neighbors here. I think moving it up to 11 o'clock would be a complete burden on all of us around there. So just hope we keep the hours the way they are. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Without closing the public hearing, back to the board?
No, you said Mr. Jennings.
Yeah, I'm gonna, back to the board, but do you have any other questions, board members? Mr. Jennings?
Actually, I did.
Okay.
Do we have any idea, is there any current restriction on delivery times that is being violated here, or is there just no current restriction?
at this point in time, there is no restrictions to my knowledge, and what we're stating here is we want to address that. We understand that as well, and that would eliminate the trucks before a certain hour or after a certain hour as well. Again, we've done a lot of work in that site there, both cleaning it up around the back, the sides, the front of it. We've done painting, cleaning. I mean, it's a site there that the town should be very proud of. And again, we're looking to be here for the long term. We are a commercial business. We need to make money, or a business is not going to succeed. You know, we're only asking that we can have the same as the Irving, for example, at 11 p.m. You know, we are a commercial business. We're on a commercial lot. The business As you say, traffic studies have been done, and it does reflect that it is what it is. The number of trucks that we have come in, we have a fuel truck, there would be a dumpster truck, and we have a grocery truck that would come in. And other than those, and again, those can be restricted for time frames and everything, should eliminate that late night or early morning.
Carlos?
I want to be clear on the delivery issue specifically. Do I understand you're agreeable to limiting deliveries 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.? Is that what I
Yes.
heard? Thank you.
Tim?
You still maintain the other store in the village, correct?
That is correct.
And the difference between the store you maintain now and this new ex-Gulf station is going to be, is gasoline is the difference, is that correct?
That is correct.
So, isn't the other store open 24 hours a day?
Used to be.
Is that change, that's changing?
Yes.
And
No,
what-
it has changed.
And what time does that store close?
I believe that's 11 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken on that. Used to be midnight.
So, someone who wanted to buy something other than gasoline could go down the road and get it at the other store? The same products are going to be in both stores?
Again, that other store won't be there.
But you're closing the other store?
We would be, yes.
Well, that's different information than I think we got at a previous meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So that other store is going to close?
Right. It would not be an immediate situation, meaning a week, 2 weeks, but there would be
Long term.
plans. There would be plans, probably in the short term, that we would like to renovate that building, make it more appealing and sharper. And at that point of time, we would then close the other site.
Okay.
Because the other site currently has our chill zone, iced coffee, the coffee presentation. It has the full presentation where the site that we currently have right now does not.
Okay.
So we're at a disadvantage if we were to try to close that. We could not offer that.
I was just trying to find out if you were going to maintain both stores or not.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from boards? Question, members of the board? Last topic?
Just one question.
Yes, Phil?
Your gasoline deliveries, I know you don't get them, I'm assuming you do not get them on a daily basis.
No, we do not.
Have you had discussions with the drivers or the companies that they can deliver? The reason why I'm saying is because I would hate to be in a position where we get calls that there's gasoline being delivered at 4:30 in the morning.
We can control that.
I just want to make sure of that. Thank you.
Going back to the public, anybody with a last comment, something that's new? Yes, sir.
I lived through the Mountain View Middle School project.
Can I have your name for the record, sir?
Dan Duval.
Okay, Dan, thank
And
you.
the tractor trailers came up at 6 o'clock in the morning. They weren't supposed to start till 7. The police chased them out. The next day, they chased them out. The next day, they parked on Tibbetts Hill Road instead of Lauren Lane and idled at 5:30 in the morning. You're not going to educate 25 different delivery people as to what time this establishment opens and closes. One guy will get it, he's on vacation, and the next guy comes in, he doesn't know that the delivery is supposed to be prior or after 8 o'clock. There's no idea, and there's no way of controlling this. I mean, it was tried with Mountain View, and it was horrendous. I mean, the tractor trailers, they would open up the gates at 4:30 in the morning, they'd drive up bulldozing equipment, whatever they could get away with, until they got chased out. And I chased them for 2 years. And none of it really got resolved. And I think you're gonna end up with the same situation right here.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Kathy? Judy? Excuse me.
Yeah, one thing we didn't discuss, and it sort of just came to me afterwards, but we're only talking about Cumberland Farms right now with delivery trucks. We also have to deal with the Dunkin' Donuts on the other side, the 18-wheelers bringing their stuff in as well, early hours. So it's not just them, it's the whole area.
Presently, the board does not have any application in front of us for any adjacent sites. We've had a conceptual presentation
I
only.
think she means the adjacent coffee shop that's attached to
Sitting in the building.
It's attached, little kiosk.
inside the Gulf.
Yes.
Their delivery trucks that Concord is talking about.
Yeah,
Oh,
so that
okay.
is part of the site.
That's part of the site, they'd have to comply with it. as long as it's there. Yes. Members of the board? No further questions. We'll close the public hearing at this point in time. Do you wish to deliberate on this and take care of this matter at the moment?
We gotta move on, because it's 8:30 already.
Okay.
I think it's gonna require some discussion, I just look at, we got 4 other
Okay.
things.
All right. Then what we will do is, I thank you for your presentation, Mr. Jenis. And a little bit later on, towards the end of the meeting, we will deliberate and make a decision this evening.
Would that decision be made during the hours of the meeting itself?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Probably.
Go down and get yourself a coffee and come on back.
It doesn't always happen that way, but usually it does.
Like Dunkin' Donuts? or
No,
something?
Well, I'm hoping that it
We
will.
have continued deliberations in the past.
Well, I don't think it would.
Yeah, hopefully it won't get to that, but don't wanna make a
Yeah.
promise we can't keep.
Does anybody want to sit here, or do we want a 5-minute break?
No, let's keep going.
Okay.
You've been doing really
Keep going.
well.
Move on to the next item on the agenda, map 3, lot 32A1 and 37-1-3, completeness review and site plan amendment hearing for a proposal to build a 4,800 square foot addition to the existing industrial building located at 18 Cody Avenue, to build a 2,400 square foot addition to the existing industrial building located at 36 Cody Avenue. The site plan was approved back in October 2006, and the time frame to meet the conditions of approval have since expired. The applicant is asking for the approval to be reinstated, along with a proposed phase plan of the construction of the project. Property is owned by Cody Revocable Trust 2000 and Pauline B. Cody, trustee applicant, TSL Inc., located on Cody Avenue, zoned industrial. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, as you stated, this is a TSL property, and they're working on expanding their 2 buildings that they have. The 2 buildings are industrial buildings that are on their site. It's map 3, lots 32A1 and 37-1-3. And as you stated again, the site plan was approved by the planning board back in 2006. They did allow it to expire. They didn't complete all of the approval conditions within the 1-year period of time that is typically granted for site plan approval. So at this time, they're wanting to come back and get their site plan reapproved. They did pay brand new fees for a site plan, and they submitted all the documents required for the site plan application. This is the property. It's on Daniel Plummer Road and Cody Avenue. The 2 buildings, let's see, I have my pointer. These 2 buildings here are the buildings that they're wanting to expand. Right where that arrow is where they would be expanding on this building, and then right here would be the expansion location of the other building. And what they want to do as well, and you can see it up on the diagram that that Patrick has brought. But what they want to do is they want to break it into 2 phases, and so this building expansion would be the first phase. This building expansion would be the second phase, and that's the one difference that you have between what you approved prior in your site plan and what you would have before you tonight for review and approval. So just keep that in mind. That's the aerial of the site. You can see the 2 buildings existing there in the parking lots. The road, Cody Avenue, as it exists right here, would be pushed further to the west to allow for the expansions to occur. And that's on your site plan that's in front of you. So the first building will have an additional 2,400 square feet, and the second building would be twice that, 4,800 square feet. And again, as I said, it's the same thing essentially with the request to phase it into 2 phases. They have requested a few waivers. I believe these were waivers that were granted on the original request, and so they're carrying that forward. Architectural renderings is the first one, stormwater management report, and a traffic study. And the board had approved the site plan, I believe, without these items, and so they're just wanting to sort of get the same approval at this point in time regarding that. This meets all the zoning regulations for industrial property, including wetland conservation district regulations, parking, building setbacks, height, coverage, and footprint regulations. So the recommendation is to hear the proposal from the applicant, open the public hearing to hear from the public, waive items 1 through 3 as requested, accept the plan for review, and then the board can resolve any remaining issues. And it also was noticed for you to be able to act on the site plan tonight if that's the board's wish. So the recommendation is to approve it, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. And as a note, Manchester Waterworks approval was listed twice in the approval conditions, so we don't have to have 2 conditions that state the same thing, so we can remove one of those. Just as a note, engineering staff did go out and review the site, and they did make the bulk of the comments or conditions that appear at the end from their comments. And so if you have questions, Megan's also here to help be able to answer any of those comments on the conditions. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the board.
Members of the board, can we probably start with the completeness of application and non-impact or regional?
So moved.
Second.
The beginning? Is the application complete? It is.
It's the waivers.
We're not voting on them right now, are we?
Well, if you're gonna find it complete, you're gonna waive the architectural rendering, stormwater management report, and traffic study.
Okay.
And I don't wanna.
First.
Let's go do the waivers first.
You can incorporate that in. I wanna discuss those for a moment.
Okay, then let's talk about waivers.
I guess I'd like to, well, you take them in order. Make traffic study I'm less concerned about, but architectural rendering, I think we'd like to know what's there, and maybe we get that through a representation of the applicant, what it's going to look like. So if it comes out vibrant pink and lime green stripes afterwards, we'll have some reason to say, oh, that's not what we thought.
You can't see it from the road.
Yeah, you see it from the bypass. In the stormwater management report, I guess I have a question. Since '06, which doesn't seem that long ago, but there's been a lot of changes in regs on stormwater management, and I'm wondering how that affects this proposal and what we previously approved.
Okay. Did that have an impact on the fact that when they're quickly looking at these plans, that it's talking about some mitigation and stormwater management on an adjacent lot, which I believe they probably they control because it lists both lots in the application.
You're getting to the merits now, and maybe not.
Okay.
I would agree with Jim. I mean, there's changes to impervious areas on the site, and I think we need to see an amended drainage report. I think that's totally appropriate.
Timothy.
Well, before we even get to any of this, I'd like to ask a procedural question. Reinstating the site plan, would normally have to reapply and start with something more than the old plan?
It lapsed, so we
Yeah,
can.
because we've denied people in the past, and this would be setting a dangerous precedent, in my opinion.
Jim.
Respond to that. I pondered this one. this isn't intended to be a punitive system where,
No,
and we also don't want to put applicants to, or us, to unnecessary expense or us to unnecessary pain sitting throughout proposals that we have seen before and beat up to death and know we're going to approve. So I don't mind shortcutting a procedure where they're coming back with the same plan. But as we've always said, if standards have changed, they don't get a buy on those new standards. That's one of the risks that the applicant incurs by letting an approval lapse. They come in and they're subject to today's standards, not '06 standards. So I'm not requiring them to reinvent everything that we won't make an issue of, but that is one thing I think we may. So I don't know if I answered your question. I think
You did, and I
I think
agree.
I avoided your question.
What you actually did was you clarified it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And on the other hand, you've also said before, when we've had renewals come up, that, the constitution of the board changes over time. So we might not necessarily think the same way as we did 4 years ago.
No, that's true too. Yeah,
So we shouldn't
Agreed.
just assume that we would.
All right. In terms of the architectural renderings, can we indicate that the building's design would be consistent with what exists there now, and would that be satisfactory to the board?
If the applicant will make that representation on the record, I would accept that.
Okay, I would as well, yeah.
I would too.
All right. And on the traffic study, is this of a significant of enough expansion to warrant additional traffic study or those kinds of things, moving to that issue? Jim?
Well, I'll defer to Collis, he's wiser than I.
Collis?
I don't think we need to see a whole new traffic study, but I think we need to see something from the applicant's agent that lays forth that there won't be any changes and the reasons for that. In other words, not a full-blown traffic study, but, their professional opinion as to why a new one is not necessary and the reasons for that.
You're talking about a piece of correspondence which is more of an opinion than a full-blown study?
Yes.
Okay. And what about a stormwater management report? And I would defer to a comment from Megan here, please.
To address the drainage report and the traffic study, I believe when this was brought back several years ago, Steve Griffin had a way of looking at, if there's a certain amount of traffic increase, we do a full-blown report versus a letter report. And I want to say that this fell under the letter report. And we'd have to go back and check, but I believe that we had to do a letter report, using some ITE, as typically how we do it, the ITE manual, and they just, check to see the approximate number of vehicles. It just gives us a guide of, are we talking, 10 vehicles, or are we talking 100? Kind of, it's giving us a guide to determine if we need to take it another step. I believe that was done. Hopefully that applicant can confirm that. The drainage study was done back when this first came through. I did not get back into the drainage study and re-review that. There was no new impervious area proposed from the original site plan that you saw back in 2006. My understanding is the only new regulations that might apply would be the new stormwater manual best management practices, which, promote infiltration and some new innovative methods. So if the board wants them to look at a different drainage system, then we can go down that road and do that. The system that's proposed is a detention basin with a treatment swale, which is common, still what we're seeing, but there are new innovative methods that are being used now. But again, because there was no increase in impervious area since the previous site plan, I didn't delve back into that whole drainage study. I didn't see that there was a need. The rainfall calcs that you use to come up with the numbers are still the same. It's just that there are newer methods to deal with it, and Carlos can correct me if I'm wrong.
Carlos?
Well, what concerns me is there is no detention basin there today. There are no swales, there are no outlet structures, there is no detention basin there, and they're proposing to put one there. And I'd like to see how they sized that basin, how they designed it, and has it been done properly?
But that was submitted in the original approval.
Yes, in review.
You haven't seen it, because I don't think you were a member of the board at the time that this was approved. But, yes.
No, I was just going to say, that was a full-blown study. We looked through it in great detail, made sure it was sized properly to meet the storm events, and
basin
believe the
location
storm-
hasn't changed?
Say that again?
Nothing's changed, the
No,
basin
nothing's
location
changed,
changed?
and actually, my understanding, the only change in this is that they're looking to take what was previously approved as, kind of both of them at once, and they wanna phase it, so that they wanna do one year and one the other. And my concern was, are the drainage improvements gonna be done in phase one? And the answer is yes, they are.
Well, I would say if that's the DPW's recommendation, I would be comfortable again with a letter report to that effect.
Just stating that the same drainage calculations apply, and
Yep.
something like that, okay.
And they'll function as originally designed and intended. They
From me
compl-
or from the
and they
applicant?
comply with today's standards.
Would you like that from staff or from the applicant?
From the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Okay.
So I'm just taking your recommendation and saying the applicant
Yeah.
needs to
Jim?
provide that.
A question for the town engineer. You designed to what year storm, 50-year storm now?
I believe 50-year storm with a 100-year check.
And what was this system designed to?
I'd have to go back and look, but since I've been here, I believe those numbers have been the same.
Well, I would appreciate knowing that
Okay.
is true or not true.
Yep.
Because I thought you had upgraded it to a larger storm than it used to be, a 20-year storm or 25-year
55.
storm, something like that.
I'll have to go back and
I
check.
think it's gotten more stringent recently. I was appreciate if you could check.
I'm prepared to make a motion that we accept this, waive for acceptance purposes only the items, but we will expect before we proceed on the merits that we obtain a statement from the applicant on the record about the architectural appearance, the thingamajiggle that Collis just requested for the stormwater, I forget what you called it.
A letter report.
Letter report, yeah, and similarly on the traffic study to go forward with. That we find it has no regional impact and that it is otherwise complete and ready to be heard.
Is there a second to?
I'll second that.
Okay. The motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? I have a question for the applicant. I drove up there this afternoon, and it looked like the back site has been extensively modified or has a lot of dirt on it. Is that part of this application, or what do you propose to do up there?
Pardon me? Excuse me. For the record, Patrick Colburn, Keach Nordstrom Associates, representing the applicant. That back piece of land is also owned by the Cody family, and for a number of years, close to a couple decades now, that piece of property has been used as sort of ancillary storage space for the Cody Business Park and the businesses that they run out of the Cody Business Park. For instance, I'm joined tonight by Lance Cody, the trustee from the Pauline Cody Revocable Trust, and he is the owner and operator of TSL Property Management. They own and manage the Cody Business Park, and what you see out there is equipment, landscape materials, etc., that he uses in those maintenance activities of the business park. All of that stuff is owned by the Cody family.
Okay. Hearing that discussion, is there any other further discussion on the motion on the floor? Moving the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is unanimous. Can you please bring us up to speed on what it is you propose to do with additional information?
I think most of you folks have just gotten a pretty good update on what's going on and where we stand with this. Back in '06, when you folks saw this, the Cody family came to our office and was looking for help in expanding their existing business park. They have a primary tenant in what's labeled on the plan as building number 3. That's Accurate Brazing. They occupy the majority of building number 3 today. And back in '06, they desired for more space. And that's what Lance, in coming forward with the plan, was trying to address. Once he gained all of the approvals and permits necessary to move forward with construction, not sure if it was the economy or what, but the Accurate Brazing business slowed, and they put the brakes on the project. And so his principal tenant that was in need of space no longer needed the space, and therefore the project came to a halt. you're correct in stating that, that the conditions of the '06 approval were never fulfilled, mainly because the project was put to bed altogether. Wouldn't have mattered if the conditions were fulfilled anyhow, because no application for building permit was sought, no building permits issued. So the site plan approval has lapsed. Now, today, 2010, Accurate Brazing again desires for more space. They, between 2006 and now, have occupied something like an additional 1,200 square feet within Building 3, and desire for the additional 2,400 square feet that is proposed in Phase 1. Someone tonight, I can't remember who, stated that the plan before you is exactly what you saw in 2006, and that's true if you look at the finished product of Phase 1 and Phase 2 construction. The only differences that you will note are related to conditions of that 2006 approval. When Lance came forward several weeks ago, came to our office and was looking to sort of reapprove the old site plan, I made sure before I issued these site plans that I addressed as many of those conditions as I could. You'll notice that there's a gravel maintenance road drawn on the plan leading down to the detention pond. That was requested by Public Works during the '06 approval. I asked our landscape architect to beef up the landscaping so that it met current zoning ordinances here in the town of Goffstown. Things of that nature, as well. Very minor utility changes related to Phase 1 and Phase 2 construction to make the water main improvements and so forth work in pieces. That's really the only difference you'll note between the old plan and the new plan, if you will. Phase 1, 2,400 square feet. The space is proposed as storage, accessory to the Accurate Brazing operation. Won't increase the septic demand. When Phase 2 comes along, a new septic system is proposed, as was previously in 2006, for both the 4,800 square foot Phase 2 addition and the 2,400 square foot Phase 1 addition. We are making provisions to tie Phase 1 building into that septic system in case for some reason Accurate Brazing becomes a non-tenant, in which case the Cody family would attempt to lease that to another user. If all goes as planned, Mr. Cody will be able to pull building permits almost simultaneously for Phase 1 and Phase 2. Obviously, with the economy the way it is, he has an end user for Phase 1, and that's what he needs to break ground on very soon in order to meet their space demands. He has a prospective tenant for Phase 2, but wants the flexibility of constructing that when he's certain of that availability. In terms of local zoning, I wasn't aware that any changes were made to the local zoning that would affect the previously approved plan. When I heard Brian earlier state that we were requesting waivers as was previously requested, I wanted to make sure that the board understood that we did provide in 2006 a complete stormwater management report, as well as a traffic memorandum. Megan was correct in stating that back then Steve Griffin did look at things in terms of account. I read Steve Keach's from our office traffic report this afternoon, and it stated that in both the AM and PM peak traffic hours, 6 additional trips were anticipated because of the additional space. And at that point, I believe I read in an old staff report that was deemed sort of a negligible increase with no impacts to the adjacent streets and intersections. The stormwater management report was prepared by an engineer in our office then, sized the pond, and is in terms of requirements, I was concerned. The state of New Hampshire certainly has changed their requirements, particularly in the alteration of terrain program for the stormwater management provisions, temporary and permanent erosion controls, stormwater treatment, and so forth. This project does not disturb 100,000 square feet of contiguous land area and therefore is not subject to the alteration of terrain guidelines. As Megan stated, the plan, as was approved in 2006 and as is before you tonight, does propose a closed drainage system to convey stormwater from the addition, including roof water, down through a riprap swale into an above-ground detention pond, further through a treatment swale, level spreader, and then down the hill toward nearby drainage systems, open drainage systems. That basically summarizes the progress of the site, if you will, since 2006. We need to receive from DES one permit for a construction approval for the construction of the proposed septic system. Other than that, if there are any questions, I'll try my best to answer them.
Members of the board? Collis?
When you get your alteration of terrain permit, did it include these additions as well, this site layout?
Correct. I'm sorry if I was confusing there. This project did not require an alteration of terrain permit. It didn't disturb 100,000 square feet. Phase 1 and Phase 2 together are under 100,000 square feet of land disturbance.
This Phase 1 and Phase 2?
That's correct.
I'm talking about the entire park, because you have to look at the last 10 years.
The park...
activities within the last 10 years. If those activities within the last 10 years exceeds 100,000 square feet, you need a permit.
Understood. From what I understand, the Cody Business Park was constructed several decades ago, and the work on the adjacent lot that the chairman mentioned earlier, I'm told is over 10 years old. It was done after a 1998 approval or 99 approval, somewhere in that range.
Could you get us some confirmation of that?
Yes, I can.
Other members of the board? Seeing none at the moment, I'll open the public hearing to the public. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak in reference to this particular application? I'll ask again. Anybody wishing to speak in reference to this application? Seeing none, close the public hearing. What's the board's prerogative at the moment? Yes, Lowell.
You know, he just described, or not really described, but just mentioned that there were, several minor changes after we were just told that it was the same. I don't think we should be jumping into this without actually seeing what these changes are.
Okay. You have the floor.
If I may, I didn't mean to confuse anybody. The only changes, and I can summarize them as I thought I did, are in conjunction with conditions of approval from the 2006 plan. The construction or the proposed construction of a gravel maintenance road to the detention pond, increased landscaping because of the current zoning requirements for landscaping, and then provisions for phasing. The end result is materially the same.
So, like the utility modifications and those kind of things you mentioned, those are just phasing changes, not changes in the way they'd be constructed.
That's correct. Both plans proposed the identical septic system. Phase 1 proposes a stub from the Phase 1 building to the limit of Phase 1 paving, and then Phase 2 proposes the rest of the construction. The Cody family has already made provisions for electrical upgrades on site to service accurate brazing. That is unchanged. The water system, in the end, will be almost identical to what was previously approved. The only change was because in Phase 1, the water main is being extended, which was approved in 2006, because it remains under Cody Ave. If I didn't extend it, it would be under the building additions. So, but in Phase 1, I didn't want to do all of that work, or Mr. Cody didn't want to do all of that work. So I I hooked onto the existing water main in a different location in Phase 1, moved it, and then continued it for Phase 2, so that in the end, the result is the same.
So do the plans we have here describe all that?
Yes, sir.
Carlos?
I have a question for Megan. Megan, have you had a chance to review the road and drainage maintenance agreement? And is it acceptable to DPW?
Is that new or from?
Well, I know it's attached to our package. It doesn't have a date on it, so I don't know. Oh, wait a minute. It's dated July 23rd, 2010.
I don't remember looking at that recently. I don't think I got a copy of it, but I can review it.
Should have done a couple.
Attached to the back?
Well, maybe in tonight's packet, but I didn't get it before tonight, if it's in this. Unless it got lost, which is very possible, but I don't remember seeing that.
So you
I
just need
definitely
to
got the new
review it.
plans and went through those.
You just need to review it.
Yeah.
Members of the board?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I meant to, in response to Mr. Raymond's request, state for the record that it is the Cody family's intention to add on with like architecture.
Thank you. Members of the board, is this something that we can deliberate at the moment? Or do we?
I'd like to.
Okay. Are there any issues that we need to resolve, Brian, that you're aware of at the moment?
No.
Members of the board?
The only thing is Megan's review of the road, of what brought up the road plan agreement.
Well, there are a couple of opinion letters that need to be.
Couple of opinion letters.
But I can keep.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, in addition, meaning in addition to that.
There's going to be several conditions on the
Right.
approval, as I said,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, those, I think all the items that have been requested tonight by the board to be submitted could be conditions of approval if the board wished to do that.
I'll take a crack at a motion, if you'd like me to. I move that we approve the site plan as it's been presented to us tonight with conditions. And somebody keep a check on me here. One is that the road and drainage easement be reviewed and found acceptable to DPW department. The receipt of a letter from Keach Nordstrom relative to architectural renderings being consistent with the buildings that are there today. Comments relative to the stormwater management system. Traffic impacts. The need for what? Oh, and confirmation that there's no need to obtain an alteration of terrain permit. Those are the conditions I had. Did I miss any?
And do you want to add also 1 through 15 as noted?
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
1 through 14.
Whatever's.
Yes.
Question for Carlos and Mr. Coburn. Are we concerned about any change in DES requirements for stormwater management from when we approved this in '06? Because you're going to get confirmation that the stormwater management study is still valid, but what do we do with that?
And that it's consistent with current standards. I think, yeah, do you understand?
I do,
what
yeah.
we're asking for?
Yeah, I think we are, if I may, I think we're subject to the town of Goffstown's current zoning requirements.
Yes, but we also look to the drainage to comply with state standards, and if those have changed, I guess we're going to know that.
Bioretention? Yeah, I mean, we'd want some affirmative statement from you that it does comply with current storm water management treatment standards.
Okay.
I guess the motion would say that he submit those and those be found to be acceptable by the Department of Public Works. Does that cover it, Jim?
Yeah, it's a condition of approval, and it's subject to, if it's not adequate, then it has to come back to the board
For
Right.
for further review,
For
Right.
compliance
for
hearings.
compliance
for
hearing.
Further actions.
So we have a motion made by Collis, but I don't have a second yet. Seconded by Phil. So we have the motion, and we have a second. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I might just make one clarification. It was stated that the approval conditions would be 1 through 14, I think because of the duplication of the Manchester Water Works approval stipulation. However, I wanted to make sure that the one that we delete is actually number 9, not number 15, because number 9 states that it may be a condition, may be required, and the other one is more specific, just stating that Manchester Water Works approval is required.
That's fine.
So 1 through 8 and 10 through 15.
Correct.
There's still 1 through 14.
When you renumber them, yes.
Correct.
We're not gonna renumber them. It's 1 through 8 and 10 through 15, please. So did you modify that?
Got it.
Okay, the second has been modified. Going around the table, any comments? Now move the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those nays? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, folks.
Shall we take our 8:30 break now?
Yes, I need to take my 8:30 break for 5 minutes.
That was
5
good.
minutes, ladies and gentlemen.
Meeting's already gone late, later than people thought.
Lot 87-6, public meeting hearing for a time extension request. The approved subdivision site plan application of Woodland Trust, applicant and Placid Woods owner, for proposals to subdivide the lot into 2 lots and to build 76 townhouse-style condominium units totaling 13 buildings on lot 87-6. Property is located off of Bog Road and Mountain Road, zone residential 1. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This, as you stated, is a request for a time extension on an approval. The site plan is due to expire on September 10th, 2010. And due to market conditions, the applicant's been unable to so far obtain financing for the project. They're requesting a 1-year extension of the planning board's approval for subdivision into 2 lots and site plan approval on the parcel to develop 76 townhouse-style condominium units in 13 multifamily buildings on map 4, lot 87-6. And the other lot, map 4, 87-6-1, would be limited to, and I want to make sure I clarify this. It was brought up by one of the neighbors that the previous conditions stated that it would be limited to a single-family or duplex unit. I stated in my report that it was only a duplex unit, so I wanted to make that clarification. The approval back in 2009 was on September 10th, 2009, so this plan would expire in approximately 1 month from today on the 10th of September if extension were not granted. If extension is granted, then that would extend it to September 10th, 2011. This is the first request that the applicants submitted for extension. A key consideration is that there have been a lot of projects going through the same issue with the way that the market has been for business and for construction. The applicant has been diligently working towards completing all of their conditions of approval. The remaining conditions are few, actually. There are not many. I can really quickly just note the ones that are still left to do. Approval condition number 1 is that they needed to get a special exception for multifamily use in a residential 1 district, including approval conditions. They did get that. The only thing they still need to do is just show that on their site plan that they had, that, and actually, Mr. Coughlin handed me a plan tonight that shows that note on there. I haven't confirmed that myself by looking at it, but he had his engineer go back and redo it. He was in my office earlier today, and we were discussing that. So he had that redone and just handed it to me tonight. So that should be done. The only other things really is to, for condition number 4, to have all the documents and agreements recorded. Those are all drafted and sitting there waiting. The applicant really is wanting to just not do that yet because they need to be able to get the financing to purchase the property so that they can technically be the ones signing on the easements and the agreements and everything rather than another property owner. And so those are kind of on hold until the property owner can obtain the financing and purchase the property and move forward with the project. The only other condition that is left to be done is to have the acceptance of easements by the Board of Selectmen, and that can't occur until the easements are signed by the property owner, which can't occur until they purchase the property. So it's kind of a step thing where we need to be able to get the financing, or the applicant needs to be able to get the financing for the project before he can move forward with the rest of the conditions. So with that, I didn't want to go through too much more. The rest of all of the conditions are the same. Nothing has changed in that regard. The recommendation would be to approve a 1-year extension to September 10th, 2011. And there are also the few other steps. You have to find that the site plan does not have a regional impact, or the extension does not, and accept it for approval. And there is a public hearing on this item as well. So I'll turn the time over to the board.
Members of the board, and looking at our recommendations, I think we need to address items 1 and 2.
I so move.
Second.
Moved by Jim, seconded by Phil, that this site plan extension approval does not have a regional impact and is complete and ready for review. Discussion of that motion. Hearing none, I'll move the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Coughlin, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Attorney Jim Coughlin, almost got my name, and I represent Woodland Trust. We're here for a request to grant a 1-year extension in regards to the project. Let me explain a little bit of what Brian explained, is that I'm not looking for financing just for the land. I'm looking for financing for the infrastructure and the units themselves. We had financing packages in 06, 07, and in 08, and since then they've pretty much all expired. I've been to New Hampshire Housing Agency. They had one issuance this year. There was a waiting list for it. I've never not had financing for a project. The normal procedure in any of the ones that I've done, and most real estate lawyers would know, is that you get your approvals, you go in, you get financing, you record all the documents, you get your construction loan, your infrastructure, et cetera, and so forth. And it's kind of new to me because I never really had an issue with any banks. I'm not going to go through the list of banks I went to. In fact, I can't find half the loan officers that I've dealt with for 20 years because the banks move them along somewhere else into some pasture that I don't know where they are. And we are pursuing now joint ventures and equity investors, and we have several groups I'm optimistic on it, not happy with that approach, because you have partners that I normally don't want. But I've been through the list of items and completed all the items that I'm eligible for. I don't mean eligible for, but that it can. For example, one of the conditions is to make sure that there is as-built, which is usually done at the time the construction is made. The easements haven't been approved by the selectmen because they only approve it when they're signed. But they have a disc. They have all the professional stamps on it. They have all the changes that were made, all the agreements, including the maintenance agreement, the development agreement, and the conservation easement. All the changes have been made in those documents, public access. There was another requirement that they're subject to all local and state ordinances and regulations. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Members of the board, do we have any questions of Mr. Coughlin? Yes, Jim?
This is Mr. Rose, just to confirm, as we usually do, that there've been no changes in the zoning or subdivision regs that would not allow us to grant the same approval that we did a year ago. Not aware of any.
Mr. Chair, no, there have not been.
Okay, thank you. I'll open the public hearing. Any members from the public wishing to speak in reference to its application for a time extension?
I'd like to sit where Mr. Coughlin's sitting, if I may.
Kathy, you have the floor.
Hi, my name is Kathy Hooten, and I directly abut this property. Just on a lighter note, I just have to say on August 2nd, I was in front of the zoning board because my neighbor next to me decided to put in 3 goats and 12 chickens and a beehive. And now I've got another neighbor who's abutting my property in the back who wants to put in 76 multifamily condo townhouse units. And I'm thinking to myself, this is quite an interesting piece of property I have here. I got a farm on one side and I got 76 multifamilies on the other, but the farm's going to go. So I thought I'd share that. I thought it was kind of interesting. First of all, I think in following through with how I have always felt about this project, I first would ask you, of course, to deny it. And I would ask you to deny it primarily because I don't consider the financial situation and the financial picture to improve within 6 months or a year. I think if anybody watches the news and listens to the president, they will, and Geithner, you will see that there are some indicators that trend is towards improvement, but it is absolutely very slow, and there's also discussion as to whether or not we've actually bottomed out in this economy. I feel that his financial conditions are not one that should be concerning to this town, and that this project in itself, when you take and look at all of the development that has to be done, be a hand course system, being a condo development, 2 sewer lines going through, pump stations, lights, propane, drain. I think by the time you calculate that and you're looking at private enterprise money, the cost of what a condo would cost relative to the conditions and economic conditions of this time would be prohibitive. And I do not believe that come September in 2011 that the cost of the construction would change such that it would alter what the actual marketing value of the condos would be. With that being said, I would, of course, ask that you not deny it, because for those reasons, I don't see any change that would occur within the next year. But then I'll go on another route, and I'm going to say to you that, okay, if your thoughts are that you want to extend it, I'll go along with you this far, and I'll go halfway with you. I think if you were to look to do an extension for this site plan, that the extension should be through March 31st of 2011. My reasoning for that is that there are two major time elements that are going to occur between now and March 31st of 2011. The alteration of terrain permit expires on February 19th of 2011. His alteration of terrain permit is based upon the rules and regulations that were effective as of December 31st, 2008, which is actually the day that the application was submitted to the alteration of terrain and accepted. Because it was accepted on the 11th hour of 2008, December 31st, it does not fall under the new rules and regulations of the alteration of terrain, which is now a new 85-page document, which became effective January 1st of 2009. And I'm sure Collis can confirm that, so be it. Based upon that, I corresponded with Gloria Andrews, who is a civil engineer at the Alteration of Terrain Bureau, and I asked her what part of this plan would you think, or give me some idea of this plan, what doesn't it meet anymore? Because it's under the old rules, not under the new rules. And I have a copy for everybody here, if you'd like to pass them around. She said, I didn't have time to look at the project in any detail, but here are a few things. Soil mapping.
Is this yours?
Yeah. We now require site-specific soil testing. They probably determined their soil types based on SCS soil mapping. This could make a difference. Pre to post discharge of the site. We now have different requirements to pre to post discharges off-site. They need to meet the pre versus post requirements of the environmental WQ 1507-05, and 1507 is the new rules and regulations. Then there's some calculations that she's showing on this. As far as recharge is concerned, they now have a recharge requirement that needs to be looked at. Treatment swales, which was a big issue. It is now more difficult to use treatment swales. The old 100-foot-long treatment swales don't usually meet the new rules. Detention. We no longer allow for detention to be used for treatment. Retention filtering facility. We are now more strict about how far above the elevation of seasonal high water a system needs to be. Very, very important factor when looking at the hand core system, because the hand core system was at seasonal high level. Infiltration rates. We are now more strict about what we allow for infiltration rates. These are some of the issues that are specific to this plan that Gloria up at DES, Alteration of Terrain, civil engineer, has stated would be needed to be looked at again by the Alteration of Terrain under the new rules that became effective in January 1st of 2009. That, again, that Alteration of Terrain permit expires on February 19th, 2011. If you extend this application till March 31st, you will now know what will happen at the Alteration of Terrain Bureau with this application and permit. The other issue of the extension till March 31st is that our town votes. We vote the first or second week in March. Last year it was on my anniversary, March 9th. And there are, and I think Brian can confirm with this, there has been discussion at the zoning board level of changes that we feel we will probably be making with the ordinances. We may have a workshop on that. And therefore, we may have changes that he would be subject to being aware of March 31st. And if he was to come back to you for an extension, those are things that you would want to look at that time. I think to give him another year is too far. I think that we need to look at a March 31st date as a possible extension. If you do not feel that this plan should be denied, and then when he gets financing, because it was so complete, then he can reapply. Then all of these conditions, all of these rules and regulations would be pertinent to it. Probably a new function and analysis report of the wetlands would be requested. And we would start where we ought to start, when he has the money and he's ready to go. And if everything is what it is today and what it was, and he meets all the criteria in the future, he shouldn't have to take another year and a half to go through. So I firmly really feel that your decision should be a denial. I don't think a financial reason is, in this particular economic time and condition, is going to improve within a year. I certainly don't feel it's going to improve within 6 months. But if you're thinking on giving him an extension, I would say no further than March 31st, because of those two major time issues with the permit up at AOT and the town vote. And I think that in the best interest of this town, any plan or any site application for development of this size, we as board members and committee members need to be sure that plans are current with the rules and regulations of the town, of the state, and of the federal government. And because this has been on the table for so many years, this plan is not current with all the rules and regulations as it should be. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Kathy.
Can I ask a question now?
Yes, you may. Carlos.
Kathy, when you had your discussion with Gloria Andrews,
yes,
her email talks about the differences between the old AOT rules and the new AOT rules. Did you talk to Gloria about the ability for an applicant to request an extension on the existing? I think you ought to have that conversation with her.
No, and I know that they do have the ability to apply for an extension. It was in a letter that she had originally sent, I think it was for the file up at DES. But if that request does go in, then I certainly would speak to them about it, because I think it would be in the best interest of DES to an AOT to make them comply with that which became effective on July 1st, 2009. And I think that is where DES wants to be, and I think that's where Tom Burke wants to be, is that he wants and there were reasons why, there were strong reasons why AOT put in such strong rules and regulations that became effective January of 2009, because some of the things, as Gloria did state, were major concerns of DES. And I would think that when he does come back in for an extension, that they would think to deny it so that he would now come under conformance with the January 2009 new rules of
it's just an observation. I think it's a
services.
conversation you ought to have with her, because there is the ability to request extensions on those old ones.
Yes.
Do you know when the wetlands permit expires by any chance?
And yes, let me think. I have a copy of it with me.
September 2012.
That's right.
Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public wishing to speak in reference to this application? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Prescaza. I'm a direct abutter, and I'm also a registered architect in the state of New Hampshire. I am concerned about the extension that's been requested by the applicant because of the amount of time that he has had to meet all of the conditions and the requirements of the project. When he first came, the most recent time that he came and spoke about the economy and what he wanted to build, and he felt that this would be good housing for our community, one of the pieces of evidence that I presented to this board and the zoning board were foreclosure notices on townhomes that were similar to this. And so I find it somewhat ironic that he's coming back and saying that he can't get funding now, because of the economy and foreclosures, and we have an excess supply of this very kind of housing in our community. So that being said, I went back to the applicant's letter that you have as the cover sheet for your packet. And there's 2 points in particular that I'd like to bring to your attention. In the second paragraph, he writes, we have completed most of the conditions for approval listed in your notice of decision dated September 23rd, 2009, including the special exception which was granted by the Zoning Board of Adjustment in February. Well, I pulled that notice of decision from my files and town files, and I've just notated he kind of blanket statement says, well, we didn't put these in yet, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different documents that are not completed and not filed. And I would also refer you to the cover sheet of his application that has application for the time extension, is this document. This requires the owner of the property to be represented, and that owner is Placid Woods. And then there's a previous document that allows Jim Coughlin to speak on the owner's behalf. So this owner is fully aware of what this developer wants to do. And these documents that are the easements run with the land. They don't run with the owner. There's no economically based motivation for them not to have filed those documents. And for the developer to take the position with this board that this is an economy-based reasoning why he hasn't filed these documents is simply not true. It costs pennies on the dollar to file a legal document with the Registry of Deeds. It's not huge. So his reasoning, when I go back to his cover sheet, and he says in the third paragraph, I request the extension because we are unable at the present time to obtain land acquisition, infrastructure, and construction financing from our lending sources due to a bad state of the economy and the condition of the real estate market. Local banks are not presenting lending funds for multifamily projects, and we have been pursuing financing through private equity funds, investors, and joint ventures. We anticipate a more favorable response from lenders as real estate market improves and foreclosures decline. Well, then I go back to his reasoning for needing a time extension, and he says in the first paragraph, second paragraph, we have completed most of the conditions for the approval listed in your notice of decision. Well, the fact is he has not. He got the special exception, but he hasn't done the legal things that don't cost him any money. So we're required to come and, as abutters, give our reasons why we don't think this should be approved, why we don't think the time extension should be granted. Those things are within his control. That's not the economy. He just didn't do what he needed to do. And I'd also like to echo what Kathy said about the AOT permit. That is important. Whether he gets an extension or is not granted an extension is not up to this board to decide. The fact remains that the law has changed, and part of your conditional approval stated previously that all of the development needed to be in compliance with current regulations, ordinances in the local and federal level. And that was even said during the debate just now. So everybody was on the same page, and now the rules have changed, and he feels that it's important to get in and get that time extension so that he doesn't have to comply with those more costly construction aspects. And particularly the hand core system that had the drainage, that proximity to the seasonal high water was critical. And even in the review, it was marginal with the old rules. That will become an issue when it's reviewed under the new rules. And similarly, I know because of my business that there's a length
of a swale that's, it must be over 100 feet. Well, that's, when you look at what their plans are and the length of it and the location, the orientation, it's quite possible that their drainage system will need to be reworked and come more onto the uplands, which will affect the density of this project. So there are many, many different aspects that come into play when you're under the new rules. And I would encourage this board to deny the time extension, and when they're ready, when their ducks are in the row and that parcel can be developed, let the parcel be developed in a way that's in concert with our local rules and ordinances at that time. And I thank you very much for your time. One last thing. There's the New Hampshire stream crossing guidelines. That became effective May 2009. That may also, as another document, come into play. There are stream crossings that are affected in this site as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the public wishing to speak in reference to this application for a time extension? Seeing none, member of the board, you have any particular questions at the moment? Then I will, Mr. Coughlin.
In regards to the alteration of terrain permit, we did file prior to the changes. The alteration of terrain permits at that time were good for 2 years, I believe. Now the alteration of terrain permits are good for 5 years under the new regulations. It's my understanding through my engineer and through conversations up there that if I apply, if I let the permit lapse and I try to reinstate that one, then I would have a very difficult time. I'd come under the new rules. But I've done this in the past too, is that as long as I do it, I think it's 30 days, I'm not sure, 60 days, I'll do it in September 1st. But that it's usually granted for that same period, or they'll grant it for the 3 more years that I 3 more years because they want to do it in a 5-year type of span. As far as the finance, I've done 75 projects, 50 on my own with partners and 25 as a lawyer with clients, when I had clients in those days. And I've never not finished a project, never not got financing. I'm not putting this on myself as that I didn't go out and do in due diligence the things that I had to do. I've done them for the 35 years that I've been doing this. Everything I've done in the approval process that I said I was going to do, I did. So I request that. The ZBA is another factor. It will expire on February 2nd. I will request a renewal of that particular one too. But those are the only 2 items. Okay. And recording the documents is not the issue, and it's not the land ownership. The seller and I are in pretty good terms, and he's cooperating with me on all this matter because the permits and approvals and the land are hand in hand together in this, and he understands that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think my request is unreasonable.
Just to clarify, the request for an AOT extension has to occur no sooner than 90 days before the expiration and no later than 30 days. So it's a 60-day window where that request has to be made.
No sooner than 90, no later than 30.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on my calendar.
Barbara, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question on conditions, and I just want to open it while the public hearing's there, so if there's any question, Mr. Coughlin can answer it. Brian, if I look at the notice of decision, and I'm going through it, 1 has been met, right? The special exception, I'm just going to go through them. That, if we agree, has been met. You've received discs in regards to the plans to date and appropriate files. There's been a representation that documents have been developed but not recorded to your knowledge. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. I can understand the not recording issue in regards to the names and the approvals. Did the meeting get held on October 22nd in regards to the conformance hearing, in regards to agreements? In other words, everything's been approved?
Yes, it did.
The Board of Selectmen, acceptance of easements hasn't occurred due to the document and final plan issue. Has the Sewer Commission granted final approval?
Yes, they have, and I believe they are gonna, he has emails at least from like a year ago stating that they're okay with, giving an extension on whatever they need.
I'm not in regards to the extension, but my question is whether or not the applicant has done due diligence in regards to what conditions were placed on him at the time of application. And so he did receive Sewer Commission final approval? And did he receive Water Precinct final approval?
Yes, and he gave me a copy of an update on that
All
as
right,
well.
and we just spoke about the permits that we received. Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions of Mr. Coughlin? And seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. It's already closed. I didn't,
Standing in front of her.
I didn't see a hand.
Well, she was standing in front of, he was standing in front of her.
Locked her out.
I just didn't hear, when Barbara was going through all the, it's directly on point with what she was talking about. She was going through the list of conditions that needed to be met, and I didn't hear her ask, did they pay the $150,000 towards the improvement of Mass and South Mass Street intersection, and whether they had established a $10,000 escrow account. These are on the second page, J part, question part 4 and 5. There were financial encumbrances that the owner was required to establish.
Correct.
And has that been received by the town?
No more than I would think payment of final invoices, because that would be ongoing up until the permits. Are they paid?
Payment of final invoices is completed.
It is?
For DOT time?
For DPW time? Okay.
It does come back in April.
150, yes, but the 10, no.
And I think this was one of our first development agreements, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's my recollection, so I know that was.
Okay. Sure. I move that we grant the requested extension for 1 year.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Tim. Any discussion on the motion to grant an extension for 1 year to September 10th, 2011? Any discussion? Move the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself from the next item on the agenda. May I stay at my seat, or do I have to physically move?
You're supposed to remove yourself. But we don't go by Robert's rules.
No, we do not go by Robert's rules.
Go by Al's rules.
And I'll sit here.
Alan's
I'll sit here
rules.
very quietly.
Isn't there a
Okay.
TV show about that? Alan's rules.
Let's go, next item on our agenda, under new business. Map 5, lots 102 and 103, public meeting hearing for time extension request for the approved application of a 34-lot open space subdivision with one open space lot and a proposed amendment to the approval to allow the development to be built in phases. Policel LLC applicant, Whitley Hill Road, Zone Residential 1 and Agricultural, and it continued from July 22nd, 2010. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We discussed this previously, recently actually, at the July 8th meeting, and the board had decided to allow an extension to today in order to complete a few items and for the notices to properly go out for property owners to be aware of any discussion that's going to be on this project. But I'll just go back and just start at the beginning. The Viking Orchards property is on the map 5, lots 102 and 103. It's just requesting a time extension. This is an extension on top of several other extensions that have already occurred on this project, so this is not the first extension request. The current extension request is for a 90-day extension, The property owner has been working towards getting the conditions approved. These are the key considerations that are still remaining. Without an extension, the subdivision plan will expire today. The tri-party agreement that is one of the conditions has still not been signed. The applicant had hoped to have it signed by today and be able to present that as a condition that had been completed. There are still a couple of checks to be hand-delivered. I was told that I might be receiving those, and we'll let the applicant discuss that tonight. The last item of discussion was to implement some phasing, and that was an item that the board had sort of brought up to them, but had never been properly noticed for a phasing hearing or an amendment to the plan. So that has now been properly noticed for phasing discussion to occur, and we'll kind of go from there. The recommendation is to find that the site plan, actually it's a subdivision, I apologize for the misstatement. Subdivision extension would not have a regional impact. Accept the subdivision extension application is complete. Hear the applicant's proposal. Open the public hearing to hear from the public. Approve addition of phasing notes to the plan as they've been added onto the plan, and then grant a 90-day extension to meet the subdivision approval conditions to November 12th, 2010. And I'll turn the time over to the board.
Thank you, Brian. Members of the board. Tim?
Make a motion to find that the subdivision extension does not have a regional impact and that they accept the subdivision extension application as complete.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jim. Any discussion on the motion? Moving the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Is there somebody here representing the applicant? Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Attorney Pansiaco, and I've been here before on behalf of Hollisell regarding this project. And to begin at the beginning of the list that Brian covered, the extension that you have before you, I'd like to put aside for the moment. It was submitted as a measure of caution in light of the fact that we had a change of the guard over at Glenview Homeowners Association, and we were concerned that we wouldn't be able to submit a signed agreement to you tonight. The precinct, as well as the applicant, has approved the final form of the tri-party agreement, and we have a verbal agreement with Glenview, but then we had a change in membership and some new documents that related to the formation of the association that needed to be reviewed by council to make sure the vote was conforming. So we do have some people here from Glenview tonight if you would like to check with them. So that was the reason for the extension. Now, I have with me your checks, seeing that you don't accept wires, and those, we're asking those to be held in escrow until we submit the signed tri-party agreement, and I'm taking an optimistic viewpoint with that. Attached to my letter here transmitting these checks is a copy of an email from counsel for Glenview confirming for the board's benefit that there are only a couple of minor issues that need to be resolved, and we should be able to deliver that signed agreement. Now, with that said, the extension was submitted specifically for that purpose, but the more I began to think about the tri-party agreement itself, it really is an agreement between the precinct, the developer, and the Glenview Homeowners Group, and it's really an administrative condition of this approval that it be submitted, wherein there is no discretion of the board as to whether it's acceptable or not. You're not a party to the agreement, nor is the town. The precinct is a separate entity. So with that in mind, what I would like to propose is the board's consideration of the submission of that signed agreement as an administrative condition, so that we don't have to keep coming back and bothering this board with something just to submit a signed document. So that's out there for your comments and consideration. Now, on to the other two reasons why we're here this evening. What we have requested, and it's outlined in my July 7th letter, is that the project, as it's proposed, be divided into 3 different phases. The first phase would be the lots that front directly on Worthley Hill Road. And as part of that phase, what would happen is the water booster station would be upgraded, the water line and the sewer line will be brought down Worthley Hill Road, and it will be reconstructed to the town's specifications. And with that thought in mind, we did ask Public Works to prepare for us a phased budget with the bond. I got 4 copies of that. And there's 4 copies here, I believe. If you look at this bond estimate, you will see that the Phase 1 improvements, which are really off-site improvements that have been requested by the town from the applicant, not necessarily to create road frontage for our first group of lots, are being completed as part of Phase 1, along with the water booster station upgrade, which is about $88,000. Those improvements exceed the improvements contemplated in Phases 2 or 3, which require the construction of a whole new road to create the lots in Phase 2 and 3. So with that in mind, what we're asking is the board's consideration in the Phase 1 proposal that if we get through the Phase 1 improvements and the money is invested for the town's benefit, and we've now paid the fees that are due the town for the off-site improvements, that whether the board would consider that being interpreted as substantial completion for purposes of vesting our ability to complete Phases 2 and Phase 3 in the next 2 years. We're hoping to be able to build the project out over the 3 years because of the slower absorption rates associated with residential homes at this time. Phase 2 would include the first new cul-de-sac, which is shown as Kestrel Drive on the revised plan. And that includes 7 lots. Phase 3 would be the last group of lots, the furthest one from the intersection of Worthley with Mast Road. The wording of the note that we proposed to place on the plan was included in that letter, and if you need me to, I'm happy to read it, but it's articulated in the letter, and I believe you have the language, Brian. We have not placed that note on the plan yet without having the board review this request first.
Members of the board, do you have any questions
Any
of
questions?
the applicant's representative? Yes.
Yeah, where's the plan that shows the phasing? I don't
We only
see
got
the-
one.
Yeah,
We only got
yeah,
Phase 1.
this sheet we got here doesn't.
We don't have Phase
seem to
2 or
show.
3.
The plan has not changed. There are no new plans. All we are proposing is to add one note. And we were told that that's all we had to do was propose a note.
I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. They're proposing the ones on the lot, the first road, and then up above.
Then the second road.
Right, I mean, that's what they're talking about.
And with phase one, you're gonna do all of Whittler Hill reconstruction,
Yes.
all the way to the top.
But I thought typically we would require the phases to be described on the plan.
Yeah. Put that number.
Where?
Phasing note.
Oh, all right.
Right here. Do you have that?
Process issues, but, I understand
On the
what
second
that-
sheet is pretty straightforward. Seeing, no, yes, Jim,
Well,
Tim,
Tim had his hand up first.
Tim.
I'd like to ask Attorney Panciaco about your bonding request. You're requesting that your bonding also be broken out into 3 phases, is that correct?
Yes.
And are you asking that when the Worthley Hill section is completed under phase 1, you're asking for a bond reduction as substantial and complete? Or
No. Once the work is done, of course, and as it's completed, inspected, and approved by the town, the bond can be reduced. But we're asking that once we complete phase 1 and all those improvements that were requested as off-site improvements related to the subdivision, but nonetheless improvements that we're doing, a good deal of which for the town, and because they're so expensive, we don't actually need those to create the row frontage for those lots. The work is being done for the town, that be active and substantial development to qualify us for vesting so that we can complete phase 2 and 3 and not be subject to further changes in zoning and subdivision regulations. So to complete the plan as is.
So you're saying that if you're asking for vesting so that if regulations do change, you don't have to abide by any new changes?
Assuming we complete phase 1, which is what our intention is.
And will you not ask for a bond reduction at that time, or will you ask for a bond reduction at that time?
We will ask for a bond reduction as things are completed and approved by the town.
Well, I'd like you to consider the fact that if you're going to ask for a bond reduction on the road itself, you still have phase 2 and 3 to complete, and the road is going to undertake a certain amount of stress completing phases 2 and 3, so that would be a consideration that the bond might want to stay in place for a longer period of time.
And I believe there's a maintenance bond that's already factored into the analysis at the bottom.
Only 10%.
Well,
10% doesn't cover, if the main road were to sustain major damage while you're doing phases 2 and 3, I would want at least enough bond money there to repair it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, yes.
Well, first of all, that's a good issue, but I think we could address that at the time of the bond request.
We're up front, I'm just being up front.
But second, as I understand, your vesting request assumes full completion within 2 years. Because I don't mind the concept of establishing substantial completion, but I want to put a time limit on when the whole thing has to be done, so we're not coming back in 10 years and you're saying you're still working under 10-year-old standards.
Well, I mean, I think that's a subject for the board discussion
Well, as I
in regards to
understood-
phasing a open space development.
Sure, but as I understood, she said within 2 years, and you want to confirm that if that's the...
after the completion of phase 1, the plan is to complete phase 1 between now and next year, phase 2 the subsequent year, and then phase 3 the year after that.
So the plan would be modified to express that, I assume.
But, well, I mean, that's a board discussion. I mean,
It's basically a 3-year project.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is being presented.
Yes.
Correct. I don't see that in the plan, I just heard it in your testimony. So.
Yes.
Do we have a written request in regards to the change, in regards to a withdrawal of an extension request?
For?
I'm a
No.
little confused about why we just threw out there the fact that one of the conditions should be considered administrative and you shouldn't need an extension for it.
Because it's a determination by the board, I feel anyway. It would be a bit presumptuous of me to tell this board that I feel the tri-party agreement's an administrative type thing and to assume that they would agree with me.
But we don't have that before, we don't have that request before. You've got documentation that there's been, from an attorney, that there's been an agreement, but for final form. Is that what she handed you, an email that said that?
You can read that into the record if you'd like,
That what I
Brian.
mean?
It's right underneath.
What the email states, and this is from John Bisson, who is, I assume, part of the association. It says, Pat, I am able to confirm that our offices representing the Glenview Homeowners Association, there are indeed a limited number of issues remaining, and I am optimistic that we can work through those issues in short order so that the matter can be presented to the homeowners for a vote. Please let me know if you require anything further. Thank you. John.
Thank you.
And just to clarify also, there has been no formal written request to change that to
The way we've
an
been looking at it.
administrative
Okay,
condition.
I just wanted to, it's 10 o'clock, I need to make sure I know what's in front of me and what's not.
Yes.
Before I can see the whole board getting fuzzy along with me.
I'm almost done.
Losing
I
it,
hope.
so.
Any other questions from the board? I want to open it up to a public hearing. Open it up to the public. Anybody in the,
Do you have more?
I
wishing
do
to
have,
speak?
I don't think she's done.
I just had one more thing to give you. You don't have to read it all.
No, it's okay.
There was one other issue before the board here, and this was basically to assist Glenview in complying with their declaration of covenants. And it's a very simple matter, and you don't have to read all of these, but if you turn to the last page, you'll understand specifically why I'm giving you all these documents. No, don't read them. It's too late.
Better not to read them.
No, you don't. I'll tell you where the important part is. If you turn to the back of the package, I believe it's on the very last substantive page, it talks about the common facilities. And this is the recorded declaration of covenants for the Glenview subdivision. It requires the planning board to approve the association being released from its obligation to maintain and repair the water booster station. And it requires a formal approval of this board. Now, I recognize that the signed tri-party agreement is not here tonight. So what I'm asking the board to consider is approving their release subject to that final signed agreement being submitted to the board, which is implicit in the signing of the agreement, but I have to go through the process. So it really is that simple.
So that sort of goes against your argument that this is merely an administrative action, doesn't it? Since it requires our approval to release the planning board's approval to release the maintenance aspects of it, doesn't that somewhat mean we should be, as a board, looking at what the tri-party agreement is?
Well, I think signing the tri-party agreement, the precinct and the association and the developer, which all results in an upgraded booster station that's owned and operated by the precinct, and that Glenview wants that to happen, I think it's implicit that they be relieved of those obligations because that really is their goal. So,
But we have another legal obligation.
well, you have to say okay. because it's required under the declaration. And that's basically all it is a final blessing for them. And that's really all that we have before the board.
Now, can we have any members of the public wishing to speak in reference to this application? Yes, sir. Please rise, state your name for the record.
Okay, if I may sit, Leonard Stewart, 74 Worthley Hill Road. I'm a direct abutter to this project, and I'm sure most of you know me because I've been here on this project a number of times. I heard a few things in what Attorney Panciaco had to say, but I mean, one of the things that troubles me, this, unlike the previous application, is not the first application for the extension, nor is it the second, the third, or the fourth. I reviewed these dates with Mr. Rose in the office the other day, and we're looking, I believe the original subdivision approval was May 2008. Since then, we've had extensions in June 2009, July 2009, August 2009, October 2009, April 2010, July 2010, and here we are tonight. I guess my question is, how long can we string this project along? As an abutter, I'm obviously not in favor of approval, but I think it's a case of, do something or come back when you're really ready to do something. I believe the theory with putting time limits on approvals is not to allow people to bank things and come back when conditions are different, when rules are different. I think some of the points that were hit by Kathy Prescaza and Kathy Wooten in the previous thing apply to this one as well. With the subdivision that was approved in 2008, and there has been no revision in the plans, is this going to comply with the current rules, regulations, wetlands, etc.? There are significant wetlands on the back of the property. I don't know for sure if any of the rules have changed, but I think that should be reviewed in light of the approval. The other key element, last June, July, August, we were talking about the water precinct, about the tri-party agreement. I argued in a letter that I wrote to the board in October that you should have on your file somewhere that they're depending on conditions, fulfilling conditions that are beyond their control. There was a tri-party agreement in draft form last year. You're talking about close to a year. How long does it take you to settle an agreement? We have another 90-day extension here. We're into winter. We're into another construction season in May. We're going to string it out until 2011, come in for more extension in 2012. I didn't hear anything in the letter from Attorney Bisson that was read into the meeting record that gave me any indication. We have a few issues, and it'll be ready for a vote by the Homeowners Association. I believe in my dealings with the Homeowners Association on this, it takes something either a 2/3 or a 75% vote of property owners to approve it. So despite Attorney Panciaco's representations, it doesn't sound to me by any means that you're dealing with something that's a completely done deal here. Where do we draw the line? I think the other economic point that was made during the previous application, given the fact that we appear to be heading into a double-dip recession by a lot of things that I'm reading these days, I think a 3-year build-out, given the types of homes that were proposed for this subdivision originally, which, you're not talking starter homes, you're not talking small ones, I use the label McMansion. You're dealing with big homes, big lots, and a lot of site work to prepare phases 2 and 3, which leads me to the other point of my objection, the point of vesting their right to complete after the first half dozen houses on Worthley Hill Road. It's called, maybe we'll build some homes up here someday, but as I recall the plans, you're dealing with a lot of blasting, a lot of cut and fill, a lot of site preparation expenses to do phases 2 and 3 that you're not talking about with the easy houses, the half dozen along Worthley Hill Road. Yeah, I just don't think it's ready. I don't think I'd be surprised if the board deigns to grant the extension if they come back in November with a signed agreement, because that's the same thing, again, we've been hearing since last June, July, just a little bit longer, just a little bit longer. Either make a decision, draw the line, and tell them to come back when they're really ready to do something and deny it. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Stewart? Okay, thank you. Is there any other member of the public wishing to speak in reference to this application? Hearing none. Does the board have any questions of presenters? Now close the public hearing. Members of the board.
I think the applicant wanted to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
Real quick.
We're really here to put our phasing request before this board. That's a separate issue. The board can say yes, the board can say no. That's totally up to you. Other than that, the only condition we have not met is the submission of the signed agreement. And that is a necessary item to relieve Glenview from their obligations. So that's one thing. If that submission of the signed agreement becomes an administrative condition in that we can bring a signed agreement to Brian, everything falls into place and we will not need an extension, and we're happy to withdraw that request. Thank you.
Members of the board. Jim.
I'll make a motion to approve the 90-day extension to approve to the extent required that the we approve of the what this place is called, Glenview Homeowners Association, relinquishing control of the whatever the damn thing's called, pump station, provided it is assumed by the water precinct by a written agreement. And third, that we approve the proposed phasing, provided that the phasing occur in the 3-year schedule as proposed by the applicant.
You want to add another criteria to that in terms of clarifying the vote of the planning board approving the...
I thought I just did.
You did.
You did?
Yeah.
I didn't understand it. Okay.
Well,
all right.
Because I'd said it in Greek.
Okay. Do I hear a second to the motion? Tim?
I have a question for Jim on his motion. Jim, on the phasing, are you stating that should the phasing not be completed within the 3 years, that there are vesting issues that will not be agreed upon?
Yeah, I'm finding this substantially complete is subject to their completing the vesting within that time. They don't.
Yes.
I fully expected this board to grant the extension request, and I frankly fully expected there to be no tri-party agreement. That was a letter that an attorney writes, and you have no idea how many issues are left in that.
I'm not waiving that.
I understand that, but I'm a little distressed that the phasing request got put in with it, because I expect the board to approve the 90 days without much discussion. I probably wouldn't have even said much. Mr. Stewart said it. You've heard from regards to another application in regards to why these extensions really start to have other implications. But to incorporate the phasing into that motion, I think is irresponsible. First of all, if they have a 90-day extension, you can address the phasing at another meeting. I mean, it's already 10:20. You've got other people waiting. I know Mr. Raymond doesn't want to do that, but I think phasing an open space development is a major issue. The developer gets certain concessions in regards to an open space development, and I know it's a quid pro quo. it's a trade-off, how's that? I'm not even gonna try any more Latin at this time of night. In regards to lot sizes, development issues, and to just put phasing in with that, I think is irresponsible on this board. The majority of the development on this site, as was pointed out by the abutter, Mr. Stewart, is above this site. They've already gone in and cut roads, there's substantial blasting, there is a huge detention pond associated with subsequent phases of this development. And those detention ponds would absolutely be affected by the rules regarding swales and other drainage issues where the rules are changing all the time. Not all the time, Carlos, don't get, you're not here. So, I can understand the extension request, but to somehow allow a developer to require this town to find that a plan is vested, and there was no representation guaranteeing when the phasing is going. What you've just approved is that if this first phase is done, that's what they're asking. That's what the note says, is that once the first phase is done, this project is vested. And Mr. Raymond put on a 3-year time frame for that, but you know where you're going to be in 3 years? We're not done just continuing. I mean, I just think that the combination of those two in the same motion was not appropriate, and that the phasing deserves more discussion. If this was we've phased other developments, but those have typically come in at the time of approval and have been very similar multi-road developments, where the developers have come in and said, we're going to do this part first, second, and third, and it has been consistent with the flow of the plan. That's not what's happening in this case.
Thank you. Yes, Phil?
I'm trying to recall, as it's getting late also, this being an open space development, is there any common land in this project?
Yeah.
Is there an association in this project?
Yeah.
Then what we need to address is, if you do phase one and you sell the houses that are up on Wortley Hill Road, what happens to the rest of the association and the common land and the undeveloped parcel as time goes on? I'd see that might be an issue that needs to be dealt with. And honestly, I'm not ready to deal with it at this time of night when we have other issues. I mean, I have no problem with the extension at all, but the phasing, I think that's an hour's discussion.
I don't care.
We have a motion on the floor.
Phasing out.
Do I hear a second to the
A little
motion
later.
after that discussion?
I'll amend my motion and delete the phasing from it, so the rest stays.
I didn't ask you to do that.
I'll second the motion without the phasing.
Okay. Modified his motion to eliminate the phasing, seconded by Tim. Any discussion on the motion? Move the motion in. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Yeah, just one comment,
There was
Mr. Chairman.
one non-voting member was Carlos Adams.
One comment for all the members. Samos Park. If you know Samos Park, if you don't know Samos Park, ask Brian to get you the history on Samos Park. It was a phased open space project.
Okay. Let's go back to the phasing issue.
Can we continue that discussion to another night?
We're right here, right now.
The applicant got the 90-day extension. The tri-party agreement needs to be done regardless. There is another presentation that we still need to deliberate on, and we have still not gotten through our agenda. I move to continue the phasing request to the next meeting.
I'll second that. I think this needs a lot more discussion, like she says.
We have a motion on the floor, seconded by Lowell, to continue to where? When?
I said the next meeting. We've only got one thing on the agenda according to what I've got for the two things.
Fournier and Blackfriar.
So that's already going to be a long meeting, but we can put it on. So that's my motion.
To a date certain?
9/9.
If I may just make one statement, I believe the way that it would work, whether or not it was an administrative item or not, as long as the extension is in place, that allows for the tri-party agreement to be submitted. Does this board have to actually take a look at that tri-party agreement, or can it just allow staff to sign off on that and we bring it to the board chairman and have him just sign the plan when all the conditions have been met? Because if that's the case, this plan may not have to actually come back for another public hearing if the phasing is decided on tonight. I'm not proposing that I really want to stay here for a long time tonight, but I'm just asking the question, is it better to address it now and not have to do another public hearing, or?
We go home at 11. I leave at 11.
It's an amendment to the site plan. It needs further discussion.
Discussed.
A significant amendment.
I'm gonna move the question.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. To continue the discussion of phasing till September, what date? 9th, 2010. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
One non-voting member.
Moving on to the next item on our agenda this evening, map 15, lot 160 and 168. Under old business subdivision review for a proposed lot line adjustment, John and Estelle Hill, Roland Villamure and Claire Valancourt, Laurier Street Zone Commercial. You have the floor.
Good evening, my name's Rick Kohler, I work with Todd Land Use Consultants. This is around I'm here to represent the revisions to the plan.
Have we seen these for the first time?
As requested by the board on the July meeting, during the July meeting.
You saw this.
You're giving us a plan that we don't have in front of us.
These revisions are specific to the review and recommendation. Part 6, points A and B, to locate a drainage manhole near the driveway of the subject lot, 29 Laurier Street, and as well to label the drainage manholes and structures on Laurier Street as per Department of Public Works requirements. We have illustrated and labeled the drainage structures relative to guidance provided to us by the town engineer. One issue with the manhole adjacent to the driveway, and I have a photo document to support this, is we are unable to locate it because it has either been removed during an upgrade process or perhaps paved over by asphalt. So we have shown its location according to the town plan that illustrates its location, but it has not been surveyed in the field because, as I stated, it's not evident. Also provided with certification from my lawyer, Robert Todd, the bounds have been set on the property.
This is this basin right here. Pin.
Members of the board.
Can we hear from Mr. Rose to remind us of what we're supposed to be doing on this?
Yes. Mr. Chair, let's see, you know what, I think I may have not updated this portion of it. And, well, I'll go for my report, because that's probably the the most up to date. Okay. On the last meeting, July 22nd, the board determined already that this did not have a regional impact, and they accepted it for review. We noticed it for 2 weeks from then, since it was just a simple lot line adjustment. And so, based on the fact that there are no proposed new structures, and that these lots have already been developed and they're just realigning the lot lines, the staff was prepared to recommend approval of the lot line adjustment, subject to the conditions that are listed on your report. And I believe that's it. There were some conditions that our applicant here has discussed, and so if those have been met, then it would, though they still remain on the plan as a condition, we would just categorize them as conditions that have been already met. So, and that's it.
Members of the board? Any particular questions to start with? Tim?
Brian, could the new lot that's being created, or the new expanded lot that's being created, 15160A, is that lot subdividable again now, so another lot could be created there by the requirements in that zone, or is there not frontage, or is there anything that we should be looking for the future if we approve this?
I would have to go back and look at the size requirements, but I don't believe that they are subdividable again.
Although I did not take part in drafting the plan, I did do the field work. It's my understanding that there's several provisions that would preclude the ability to re-subdivide the lot.
Okay.
Either one of the lots.
Okay.
I have an aerial photo if that's of any help as well. These two houses here, and this is the drainage easement, and this is the Chinese restaurant, and Future Science is right here.
Okay.
So, but for frontage issues,
Yeah, there is no frontage.
several issues that would preclude any future subdivision.
I mean, could you add it to this lot here, or could you add it to that lot there, you know what I'm saying? Add it backwards.
Now, this is a continuation of a public hearing. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak in reference to this application? Thank you. Megan, do you have any comments?
No, my comments have been addressed.
Okay. Members of the board, do we have any other questions of the applicant's representative? Do we have any issues that we need to resolve, or that might add questions to the applicant? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing.
Tim?
No,
Oh, you were raising it.
waiting.
Okay.
What's the board's pleasure?
Make a motion?
Yes, sir?
Make a motion to approve the lot line adjustment subject to the conditions listed below, number 1 through 6, and conditions subsequent, number 7.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Phil. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. The lot line revision has been approved.
Thank you.
Worth the wait, huh?
Well worth the wait.
Giving them all back?
No, that's the big one. That's
One
good.
on top.
Yeah.
I've got 2.
Try to keep it short. We have item to discuss remaining, and that is map 34, lot 29, which is the Cumberland Farms application for hours of operation. Members of the board. Yes, Collis.
I heard, I'm concerned about the impact this has on the neighborhood. And I heard three things that stood out to me as concerns. One was the hours for delivery. The other one was the noise associated with the operation, and the third one was the lighting associated with the operation. I think we heard the applicant agreed to limit deliveries to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., so I'm comfortable that's been properly addressed. I believe we heard the applicant say there wouldn't be no outside speaker systems or any noise being generated outside of the building, so I'm comfortable with that. But that leaves me with a lighting issue, and I'm sensitive to that issue as well. And what I'd like to see from the applicant is a plan that's prepared by a lighting expert that shows that the lighting, and if not the existing lighting, then some replacement lighting maintains the candle. We've seen these lighting plans before. Maintains the lighting on the property so that it doesn't fall off of the property or cast onto adjoining properties. I would be comfortable with that.
Now, is this lighting study something that can be reviewed by staff, or is it something you want to have come back to the board?
I think it can be reviewed by staff because I think our ordinances speak to it, don't they? Again, it's getting late and I'm forgetting this, but we've required it before, and I think our ordinance talks about submitting a plan that shows the lighting footprint, for lack of a better word, and how it's to be contained on the property and not spill over onto adjoining properties. Brian, it's in there somewhere, I think.
Barbara?
I heard all the same issues, and I am with Collis as to the issues. But it seems to me that what we have is an approved operation of a business, that hours of operation are set from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., and that we have a request to change the hours of operation to 11 p.m. And the applicant has made certain representations, and quite frankly, I wouldn't go with the 8 a.m. I don't think that's appropriate. I think 6 a.m. is appropriate on Mass Road for deliveries. But I think the first question is, under the current circumstances, are you going to approve an expansion of operation from 10 to 11 at that site? You know, I think when you start talking about lighting plans and that kind of thing, I mean, I think this applicant has indicated that that site probably isn't going to stay the same depending on what their use is over the next year or two, at which point I would expect to see some sort of revised site plan. But my recollection is the awnings on those pumps actually go over the town's right-of-way. So how are you going to deal with the lighting issue when the lit stuff goes over the edge of the property? There was when this was approved back when Tetro had it, and I think and somebody mentioned when the Tetro had it, you know, some of that stuff was addressed. We didn't have the lighting standards back then, and quite frankly, the lighting that's available now wasn't available then. So, I mean, I think you have, before this applicant starts getting told to do lighting studies and that kind of thing, you need to decide whether you're going to let it operate till 11. And I have to tell you, I'm not sure I'm inclined to allow that in that location. It is surrounded by residences. It is a materially different location than Irving or Shell, you know, which might make it something that if you're in the village, you run to at 9:30 at night as compared to not going out at all at 11 to Irving or Shell. But I think you have to have that discussion first, because if we don't have a consensus on keeping it open to 11, I don't think the applicant needs to do anything else.
Go right around the table. Phil?
When this was presented to us the last time, one of the questions I had was, what are the hours of operation of the other businesses? The reason why I asked that, because if there's no other business in the neighborhood or the area, I mean, that's to 11 o'clock, what we're basically doing is we're changing the hours of operation of all the commercials to 11 o'clock. And I don't know if we want to do that. I mean, if there are other businesses that are open till 11 o'clock in this area, but I'm not aware of any that are, but maybe there are outside of, down the road a little ways. I think we have to take that into consideration, because I think it's a little bit more than just expanding the hours of operation on one particular location to 11 o'clock when the other ones. Now, what if the pizza places want to stay open till 11 o'clock? I mean, is that what's going to happen here? I'm not saying I'm for or against it, I'm just posing that.
Tim?
I think 11 o'clock is too late in a primarily residential area, even if it is on master.
Lowell?
I believe the applicant had said that the existing Cumberland Farms is open till 11, just to answer your question about something else in the area.
But what about the other ones? What about the pizza?
Yeah, I don't know, but
I mean, that's why I had asked that question.
What about the trestle?
But
It's open to 11.
my real thing that I wanted to bring up is I wonder if this time extension of hours would be more appropriate to be considered as part of a site plan revision as opposed to ahead of it. You know, if they're gonna come in and update the site, maybe that would be the more appropriate time.
Are you saying that it's premature to be here?
I'm asking, potentially, maybe
Okay.
it should be.
All right. Tim?
Well, to talk to Phil's argument, I don't think you can compare a service station like the Gulf with the pizza parlor. There's a lot more light comes off of the Gulf station than comes out of the windows of any pizza parlor or restaurant in the village area. So they're not apples for apples. And
I agree with you.
And I don't think that hours of operation should even be compared. Different situations completely.
Well, I guess the question that I have in that, if one is extended to 11 o'clock, and there are other ones that would like to be extended, that perhaps maybe they close at 9, they'd like to go to 10, the effect that you're having in the whole area, you're changing the whole dynamics.
Right, I agree.
That's where I'm getting at. As far as planning, I'd like to look at the overall projection of the whole area and what it does. I mean, I just find out that there's 2 places that are open at 11. We have a noise ordinance that goes from 7 to 11. I mean, some of the people in the audience said that it should follow the noise ordinance. I mean, these are all things to take in consideration. One of the things the applicant is saying that residents said that they have concerns and issues with 6 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, all different hours of delivery. The owner or the agent for the owner is saying that they're willing to address those issues. In other words, reduce that for the hour of operation. I think it's a larger issue than just pigeonholing it into the 1 hour of operation. But I think it needs to be fit in with the entire neighborhood to see what it could be. Because, I mean, quite frankly, do we want 3 pizza places open till 11 o'clock at night, a gas station, and all? I mean, is that what the village is going to be?
Going around the room. Yes, Tim?
Make a motion to deny the request to stay open. Let's get it over with. It's late. Nobody wants to talk about it. I don't see anybody raising their hand.
Let me ask Carlos and Barbara if they have anything to say, please.
Excuse me.
Carlos?
I'm sensitive to the fact that they're saying they're being put at a competitive disadvantage by not being allowed to stay open as late as the other service stations in town. I understand it's a different setting, but I think it's possible to address the concerns from the abutters that we've heard so that we don't put this business at a competitive disadvantage in a town where we are constantly saying we need to welcome business. Yet we always manage to find a way not to welcome business. And that's my only point, is if we can do it in a way that speaks to and addresses the concerns of the abutters and doesn't provide an unreasonable increase in the impact to the neighborhood. We're talking about 1 hour here. then I don't think that's unreasonable.
Barbara?
I think 11 o'clock is unreasonable for that neighborhood. You know, and if we wanted to talk about changing, I mean, that used to be a service station with 2 pumps. I mean, you know,
To get your car inspected there.
yeah, you know, and then it expanded to be a bigger gas station, and then the Dunkin' Donuts got in, and I remember it was one of the, you know, people sort of thought, oh, it'll just be a coffee shop, and my recollection is the site approval even has those pump stations as parking stations, as parking spots, as part of its site approval to get enough station. I mean, it's an unusual site, it's been grandfathered, it's a huge operation today compared to what it was years ago. And maybe I'm getting too old, because I used to wonder why everything in this town was shut down at night, and now I want to know why I'm still awake at 11:15. I can't believe anything is open. So, you know, I appreciate the business aspect of it, but I think 11 o'clock is too late. I think you heard from an abutter who's running an antique store that's open not anywhere near as late, who had to deal with lighting issues. I think if the applicant comes in with a significant site plan and wants to address it, maybe consider it at that point, but I hate to put this applicant through, you know, jumping through hoops if the bottom line is that I think 11 o'clock is too late at this point in time for that neighborhood.
Somebody else got it? Lowell?
Yeah, just one thought on the other side of the coin is, you know, if, it sounds like currently there are no, you know, restrictions on deliveries. You know, if we would approve this, that would give us a vehicle to add those restrictions on deliveries that don't currently exist.
Can I make one point?
Yes.
This is something that was in Derek's research, and I'm not sure if it came out very much in the discussion or not. The site actually was originally approved for a 10:30 time, and had been subsequently requested by the property owner to be dropped to 10 o'clock, only because they wanted to be able to open, I think, a little bit earlier, and so they moved the whole operation 30 minutes earlier instead of where it was, to kind of coincide, I think, with the Dunkin' Donuts timeframes that they work with. So, just a point of information.
As a member of the board, I don't particularly have a problem with 11 o'clock at night if they can address the hours of delivery and try to manage the noise. And in terms of lighting, I have to go with Collis's concern about there are certainly methodologies to eliminate lighting concerns. And so I don't particularly have a problem with the business being open at 11 o'clock at night. Yes.
I think one of the major things that I heard coming out was the light. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we have 2 businesses on either side of it that are open later till 11. We have the Trestle on one side, and we have, is it Cumberland Farm, the one further down? That one's open till 11 or 12 or whatever. So I know I leave here sometimes and I stop in there. I'm not quite sure what the difference as far as the 1 hour in operation. I mean, outside of the only difference, they sell gas. I mean, you have people sitting outside of the Trestle till 11 o'clock at night on the outside. But I think the lighting is an issue, and I think that the deliveries, early deliveries, but perhaps the owner, the applicant, could come back and address the lighting some way. Is that in line with what Collis is suggesting?
Well, I'm concerned that it's just a small piece of the big picture. We haven't seen that. We haven't been clued into what the big picture is yet. That's my only concern, is that until such time as we are premature, even discussing this, before we see what the big picture is. Yes, Jim?
I move then that we deny, no, Tim already made the motion, we deny the request until we see the big picture.
See a
whatever
second?
that is.
Yeah?
Well, I think we have to stay reason that we deny it because the impact on the neighborhood is disproportionate to the benefit that's gained, that the applicant already obtained the benefit of an earlier opening time previously. Now they want to get the benefit of staying open late with no concomitant changes, material changes, but that when they come back in, if they come back in with a revised plan, we can entertain their request with more information about how they're going to mitigate the impact of their operations.
In particular as to lighting and noise from deliveries.
Sure.
So give them some direction. Okay.
We have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Seconded by Tim Redmond. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, move the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Chair votes no also. Motion carries to deny the application. Change of time. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, unless there's some other impending, very important item on the, needs to be discussed.
Adjourn? Oh, yeah.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
You can write whoever you want in there as seconding the motion. I didn't hear who it was.
I'll leave it.
Bill.
It was a unanimous second.
Yeah.